city address back in February, said he wanted the city to approve 8,000 housing units by December. A report to the Executive Policy Committee this week says the city has now approved more than 7,600 units, so very close to that goal. We'll hear from the mayor coming up. As well, people in the arm of Hanover near Steinbach are cleaning up that mess left by this week's heavy rain. Some had almost 18 centimeters or 7 inches of water in their basements. We'll take you there coming up in our next news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather. Well, speaking of the mayor of the city of Winnipeg, Scott Gillingham will be here for our monthly interview at 7:45. We're going to ask him if Winnipeg should have designated housing areas, sanctioned sites for houseless encampments. We're going to talk to the mayor about that and much more in our monthly interview, so stay tuned for that. And then quite a serious story coming up after 8 o'clock. A Winnipeg police officer with a history of misconduct allegations is facing more scrutiny after 3 men have come forward. They say he targeted their community. The I-Team's Christine Annabelle is going to be here with the report and all of the details. That's coming up after 8 o'clock. Right now, though, as I mentioned, our local program on till 8:37, but throughout it, you will hear national and international news, and that's next on World Report.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Acclaimed music video director Joseph Kahn has a new creature feature called Ick. He'll tell you about the film and how making high-pressure music videos for the likes of Taylor Swift and Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys helped him become a better feature filmmaker.
Making videos is really not a secure job by any way.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. The mood in Lebanon is tense. People are on edge. In Beirut, this man says he is afraid of his mobile phone. Over the past 2 days, Hezbollah pagers and walkie-talkies have detonated. At least 32 people were killed. Thousands more have been injured. And the region is watching to see how the militant group Hezbollah will respond. Senior leader Hassan Nasrallah is expected to speak in just a few hours. Let's go to the CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. And Sasha, what is the latest on these attacks?
Well, yesterday's second round hit people in Lebanon very, very hard, not just because of the increased numbers of people who've been hit, but also psychologically. People are afraid of anything that is technological and just waiting for whatever it is that Israel, from their perspective, might do next. This is, for instance, what an internal medicine specialist had to say after treating people. Her name is Dania El Halak.
They had puncture wounds on their faces. They had amputated limbs. They had open abdomens, intestines out, bowels out. It was the first time I ever see wounds like that.
Now, the New York Times is reporting today the devices that exploded were provided to Hezbollah by Israel itself, that Israeli intelligence, hiding behind a number of shell companies, had caught on to the fact that the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, was putting out orders that the organization should move to lower tech devices because he was afraid that cell phones were too easy to track. So he ordered these pagers to be bought. And when they actually came from Israel and they were all set to explode. That is what the investigation by the New York Times has come up with.
We're hearing a lot of concern this will ignite a full-blown war between Israel and Hezbollah. Is there any sign that could happen?
There are indications both sides are preparing for this. In Israel itself today, there was an attack from the Lebanese side using guided anti-tank missiles. 8 were injured on the Israeli side. And Israel itself launched airstrikes and 1 drone strike this morning against a weapons depot. So that has been going on. But we are seeing signs that it's going to escalate. For instance, the powerful 98th Division of the Israeli army, they have been moved up to the northern border. Now, it's not 100% clear whether this is being done to attack or whether it's being done in anticipation of whatever it is that Hezbollah might do on the other side as a defensive measure.
Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusek reporting from Jerusalem. In a few hours, the Liberal cabinet will lose another minister. Pablo Rodriguez will formally announce his intention to run for leader of the Liberal Party in Quebec and quit his job as transport minister. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau with more. And Janice, how is this playing out in Ottawa?
Marcia, this has been rumored for weeks, but as Pablo Rodriguez makes it official this morning, the loss of Justin Trudeau's Quebec lieutenant leaves a gaping hole in this government, not only losing his experience as a combative minister, but as one of the Liberals' national campaign chairs, Soraya Martinez Ferrada, put it yesterday, Rodriguez is a political machine. Here's Defence Minister Bill Blair.
I know he's a great Canadian, but I also know he's a great Quebecer. I know he feels very strongly about assuming responsibility and leadership in Quebec.
He's leaping here from Ottawa's political frying pan into the fire of federalist politics in Quebec. The provincial Liberal Party has been without a permanent leader for nearly 2 years now. After being decimated in the last election, the race to finally pick a new chief gets underway this winter. The stakes are high. Rebuilding the Liberal brand in this era of populist politics, suiting up to make the case for federalism in a 21st century referendum fight. Oof. Here's Quebec Liberal MNA Desiree McGrath.
This is an act of courage. This would be, in my mind, an act of personal and political courage. And no matter how much hope and confidence I have in the future of the Quebec Liberal Party, we're a ship that already sank. We are a ship that has already sunk, and we are now rebuilding.
And speaking of political courage, Justin Trudeau needs a new transport minister.
Yup. And as this news becomes official, we'll watch to see if the cabinet shuffle it triggers will be a small one, a simple swap, or whether this is a moment for Trudeau to survey other ministers eyeing the exit, make sure everyone around the table is all in for a big fight ahead. Rodriguez, perhaps for safety, isn't resigning as MP just yet, so at least the Liberals don't immediately have to face a by-election for another vacant seat in Montreal.
All right, thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. Firefighters in Emilia-Romagna use rubber boats to help residents get out of their flooded homes. Torrential rain is falling on the northern Italian region. Italy is just the latest European country to deal with this. Eric Fisher is a climate scientist. He says more flooding in Europe is expected as the planet gets warmer.
Climate change is making the atmosphere warmer and moisture, and thereby also amplifies the intensity of such extreme rainfall events.
Romania, Poland, the Czech Republic, and Austria have also been dealing with flooding. In northern Bolivia, wildfires are destroying farmland. A farmer walks through his fields, small patches of fire still burning. He says his workers were left exhausted. They also inhaled a lot of smoke while trying to contain the flames. Many of his cattle are dead. Bolivia is on track for a record year of fires. Drought is mainly to blame. A bit of good news is emerging from a new report. Canada's carbon emissions in 2023 were down. The Canadian Climate Institute says the decrease was slight. Emissions are lower by nearly 1%. But as Anand Ram reports, some sectors are doing a better job at making improvements than others.
The availability of heat pumps is starting to really be a game changer.
In a new measure of Canada's carbon emissions, buildings are a bright spot, and new technology is helping. Dave Sawyer is the principal economist at the Canadian Climate Institute.
So it really is this sort of movement to heat pumps that are starting to drive the emission reductions. And then people are naturally upgrading their houses, and the new buildings are way more efficient.
Advances in renewable tech are also helping the electricity sector bring down its impact. But one industry continued its rise, pumping out nearly a third of Canada's total emissions.
We have this sort of yin and yang effect where we're trying to, keep emissions down, but oil and gas keeps pulling us up, basically.
The problem, experts say, is the amount of oil and gas being produced cancels any gains the industry makes in improved efficiency. Janetta McKenzie is with the Pembina Institute.
A lot of those emissions intensity improvements have been sort of offset by increases in production. So this continues to be a tricky thing to solve.
But McKenzie is hopeful, saying this data shows growth and going green can coexist, but not through technology alone.
Good effective climate policy, when it leverages opportunities available through new innovation and through new clean technology, really starts to work on both an emissions reduction kind of side of things, but also on the economic policy side of things.
But without continued pushes in both policies and moving to renewables, this latest estimate says Canada will not meet its 2030 emissions targets. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
In New Brunswick, Premier Blaine Higgs is expected to trigger a provincial election today. He will visit New Brunswick's Lieutenant Governor later this morning and then onto the campaign trail. As Jacques Poitras reports, the opposition is also ready to go.
It's going to be bye Blaine Higgs.
Green Party leader David Coon got the jump on the Progressive Conservatives and Liberals, holding a kickoff with most of his candidates. The Greens have been the third-place party in New Brunswick for the last decade, and Coon is predicting they can defy expectations again.
To my amazing candidates and their volunteers, when they say a Green government cannot be elected in New Brunswick, flash a big smile and keep knocking on those doors.
Premier Blaine Higgs is looking to become the first New Brunswick premier since the mid-90s to win a third term. He faced a caucus revolt last year over his leadership style, but those rebellious MLAs opted not to run again, and Higgs noted recently that his current candidates are solidly behind him.
We're all on the same page, and that's an exciting position for me to be in.
The choice this election has never been more clear.
Meanwhile, Liberal leader Susan Holt put out a pre-campaign video pushing a message of change, taking aim at the lack of access to primary health care and the cost of living. New Brunswickers will vote on October 21st in one of 3 provincial elections scheduled in Canada this fall. Jacques Poitras, CBC News, Fredericton.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live downtown in Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Thursday morning, 6:10 a.m. We might actually start with a clear sky and some sunshine this morning, so we'll see how the weather develops through the rest of the day. That's your teaser to say it's going to probably rain again. This hour on the program, there was a big gathering yesterday, 7,000 students in downtown Winnipeg at Canada Life Centre. They were there to talk about truth and reconciliation. We're going to hear a residential school survivor who was sharing her message of hope and resilience with the crowd. So we're going to hear more about that. In addition, this hour on the program, with all of the challenges involved with cancer, what about when you are in remission or you are in recovery and you have to return to work? We're going to talk about the challenges of going back to the office after a cancer diagnosis. And will Canadians be going to the polls sooner than later? A Conservative Party move next week could trigger an election. We'll have some analysis of that. So a busy hour ahead of conversations. Heather Wells is here first, though, with our headlines. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, a Winnipeg police officer with a history of allegations of misconduct is now being accused of wrongful arrest. 2 Ethiopian men say Winnipeg Police Patrol Sergeant Jeffrey Norman unlawfully arrested them over what they say should just have been a parking ticket. We'll hear that story coming up. As well, the city of Selkirk is welcoming federal and provincial help towards the construction of a solar glass processing facility. Alberta's Canadian Premium Sands announced yesterday Ottawa and the province have signed letters of intent to cover almost a third of that project's cost. Nearly $900 million is the total. So we'll hear about that as well in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi, I didn't even ask you yesterday, and I should have. This is a yesterday morning conversation, but I'm going to sneak it in this morning.
Bring it on.
Did you get some beautiful photos?
It was too foggy.
Of the harvest moon. Really?
Yeah.
So, you know what? That harvest moon was peaked, of course, 2 nights ago between, I think it was about 9 and 11 o'clock.
Yeah, it peaked around 9, yeah.
Out my window, it was clear as a bell. I almost texted you, Abby, this is amazing.
It was just foggy in my end. I'm like, nope, I'm just going to stay back.
South Winnipeg didn't cooperate. Well, I'll tell you what, this morning, it's quite nice outside.
Yeah, clear skies we're seeing outside. 21 in Winnipeg for today. We will start off sunny, but then some clouds will roll in, and that would we're going to see more of it. We have this chance of showers showers late in the morning into the afternoon period, along with a risk of thunderstorms to go with. Some fog patches I noticed here and there on my way, but that should be dissipating as the morning progresses. It will be breezy at some point, and we will get to a high of 22. Now, in other regions across the province, it's going to be starting off with a mix of sun and clouds, various chances of showers and thunderstorm in a lot of the region. Currently cloudy up north, and then down south we're going to see most of the region starting sunny, and then the clouds will roll in and showers will definitely be felt here and there. Highs are near 21, highs near 22. Right now Winnipeg 21, and you can expect a sunny start and lots of clouds to roll in and possible showers and thunderstorms later today.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's going on in the morning commute this morning. Did you use your bike this morning, Corey?
I did. Biked in, and it's so weird how warm it is still. I mean,
I know.
Like, I see the leaves on the ground, and it's like I should be wearing mitts, it feels like, but I didn't have to. It's
I know.
been
I
lovely.
keep expecting to put on a sweater at the door, and then I'm leaving it.
Yeah, I am going to be, I know for a fact I'm going to be caught off guard that first actually chilly morning, and I'm going to be wearing socks and sandals and being like, this sucks.
Now it's cold.
Yeah, it's awful. But right now, there's not too many issues out there. I haven't heard of any major issues that I haven't already talked about. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, bike, and drive, and you see something, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. The number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, that's some of the sound of thousands of Manitoba teens gathering yesterday at Canada Life Centre to kick off Truth and Reconciliation Week. Mino Pima Tisawin, The Good Life is a youth empowerment gathering hosted by the National Truth Centre for Truth and Reconciliation. And that was the organization that put this on yesterday. Students from various schools from all across the province, 7,000 of them, came together to hear testimony from elders and residential school survivors, and also come together with music and learning and education in a full day in downtown Winnipeg. CBC's Jim Agapito was there as well. He spoke with residential school survivor Lavinia Nicola Brown, who was the speaker at the event, or one of them rather. She said she felt a lot of love and support as she shared her story with the students.
I was holding a hand with a little guy came. I didn't even know him. And he held my hand when we were in the grand opening. Just there the whole time, didn't even make strange. And I saw him running around just a while ago, and I thought, oh, good, you know. When children are happy, that means that they're healthy, and it makes the elders happy and healthy too.
How will you spend the rest of the week reflecting?
I was in the lounge, just sitting there. I was thinking back about the loss of love and how I regained it. And I was 16 years old when I started working as a first teacher's aide, and I loved the children. But federal day school was no better than residential schools. They weren't allowed to speak their own language. I spoke their language. We spoke Inuktitut. I often got reprimanded. I often got taken to the office, 16 years old. How else was I supposed to communicate with them? So that was my first job. And then January came along, the new year came along. I go to work, 16 years old, gone back to work. The principal said, there's no more funding. You can go home now. What did I know about funding? I thought I took it wrong, and I thought there's no more fun. I thought there's lots of fun with children, but he meant funding. When you're Indigenous person, your language get mixed up a little bit, and I've never heard that word before, funding. So I took it as a fun, F-U-N. I thought there was no more fun. So that made me very depressed, made me very, very sad. Here I got fired. For what? Talking my own language. That was hard, and I became ashamed. And I didn't want to speak Inuktitut anymore. I wanted to speak always English, because I had already had some education. I could speak some English, and I wanted to keep going with English now. So for the rest of the week, I think I'll be very happy now because I've been with everybody good, the good life, and we shared a lot of the good things in there. I saw a lot of performance, stories, and people talking, and it brings you up. Your spirits are up. So I'll take back home many things I learned from here, and especially that little boy that held my hand, and he didn't make strange nothing. Usually when kids don't know you, they kids are amazing, because sometimes kids will show they can tell who they can trust. And I saw that with that little boy. He couldn't have been any more than 9 or 10. Came from the crowd. All this week, and when I go home, this is a memory for the lifetime. It's legacy for us. And the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, they've done a lot of work.
How lovely is that sentiment? Kids know who they can trust. And this little boy coming out to hold her hand. That was the CBC's Jim Agapito in downtown Winnipeg yesterday. He went to the gathering to speak to some people. He was talking there with residential school survivor and speaker at the event, Lavinia Nicella Brown. This was the Good Life event at Canada Life Centre that happened yesterday. Mino Pimetisawin. The National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, by the way, was on our program yesterday talking about that big event with the students. But they also were reminding us that there's several other educational sessions that are coming up in this next week leading up to September 30th, which is TRC Day. So there's sessions with teachers, students, and the general public as well ahead of the day, which is coming up, as mentioned, September 30th.
Poplar River First Nation, let's get to know each other a little bit better. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to your community September 23rd to 27th. I can't wait to meet you and discover the incredible stories that make Poplar River unique. CBC's Communities in Focus, September 23rd to 27th. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
21 degrees in Winnipeg. It's partly cloudy. It's also partly cloudy in Brandon. It's 14 degrees. Thompson's mostly cloudy and 17. We'll start with sunshine here in Winnipeg, but then a 60% chance of showers moves in late this morning. Well, music next from Winnipeg singer-songwriter Sheena Legrand, who's returned from a 10-year recording hiatus. She shared 2 singles off her upcoming album, which is called Back to Life. And her latest is a bit of an anthem, she says, inspired by something in her own life, her late father, and all the ways he rose to the challenge of being supportive. The tune's called Heroes in the Making. And here it is on CBC 89.3 FM.
Heroes in the making.
I am a sucker for an anthem. And that's a pretty good one called Heroes in the Making. That's Winnipeg singer-songwriter Sheena LeGrand, who's returned from a 10-year recording hiatus and is back with new music. Well, the sentiment's pretty well perfect for our next interview because you sure hear the word hero used a lot when people are talking about cancer and their loved ones who are fighting cancer. Over the weekend, last weekend, hundreds of people locally participating in the Terry Fox Run here in Winnipeg for cancer research, drawing attention to the ongoing issues affecting diagnosis and treatment, as well as, of course, the hope for a cure. But for cancer survivors, there's something that is lesser talked about, and that is one of the challenges on the journey is returning to work after a cancer diagnosis or maybe after treatment. To look at how to navigate that transition, this morning Janine Hubbard's with us, registered psychologist. Good morning.
Good morning.
So obviously every cancer patient's, diagnosis is unique and circumstances are very different. But generally, broadly speaking, what are some of the challenges that are common when someone's had a cancer diagnosis or maybe treatment and they are, returning to work?
Well, you're absolutely right in your early comments. The initial diagnosis, but then the readjustment to quote-unquote normal life are some of the most distressing periods during the cancer treatment process. Because when people are going back, they're not going back symptom-free. And in fact, many people are needing to work much sooner than they're probably ready to. Just because someone has finished their chemo, for example, doesn't mean that they don't continue to have ongoing treatments, or it could be later on restorative surgeries. There are still a number of things going on, and we see lingering symptoms. We see things like fatigue is probably the biggest one that people talk about, but there's insomnia, there's kind of brain fog, that difficulty with confusion. There absolutely can be depression, anxiety. Sometimes there's a real shift in life focus because if you face the life-threatening illness, it really does kind of put in perspective for you, right? What are the things that are important? Where are my values? Am I spending my time in the way that I want to? So that transition, which, like I say, is a financial reality for most of us, can be a real challenge in terms of the when do I go back, am I ready, and how do I get through the day?
What kind of support would you? How do you characterize the support that a person might need from a colleague at work?
From a colleague, and again, often being able to get back, and it's the guys, I just want to be treated like normal. I've missed hanging out and socializing with you. I've missed that feeling of collaboration. More often than not, people make really well-intentioned comments, but they can often have a flavor or be really steeped in toxic positivity, which if you're just feeling like a lump of clay, the last thing in the world you want that day is somebody going, oh, well, you're looking so great and you've got the future ahead of you. And you just want to say, I didn't sleep last night and my body feels weird and I am really glad I got dressed this morning. So one of the best things you can do to support a colleague is just say, look, I don't know quite what to say. I want to follow your lead. I'm happy to talk about it or not talk about it. You tell me your boundaries. But I just want to let you know I missed you. I'm here for you. What can I do to help?
It's interesting, right? Because you highlighted something that is, on one hand, if someone wants to talk about it, that can be important for a person. And then colleagues might actually be shying away from any conversation, which can be, cause challenge. And on the other hand, somebody doesn't want to talk about it. They're anxious of being asked questions. So I love that. Just put it out there. Just ask a person, what do you need? What about what someone needs from their employer?
Flexibility, I think, is the number one thing, if that's at all possible. And of course, not all types of employment can provide this. But understanding that there's going to be good days and bad days. There's going to be periods of great energy and focus. And then there's going to be times when it's just, again, I kind of feel like a slug. And so whether it's, permitting some more working from home or some more virtual work, it could be allowing, like if you do really well early in the morning, maybe you can do some work before the typical workday or end of the workday, and being able to schedule in a break in the middle of the day. But just having people understand that not all days are going to be the same, and kind of working with that frustration because, again, your employee doesn't want to have good days and bad days. They just want to be getting back to things.
Can I ask you, if someone's out there listening this morning and they're trying to decide if they're ready to return to work after a cancer diagnosis or treatment, let's stay with the diagnosis so it's focused here, this question. What questions should somebody ask themselves as they're deciding if they should go back to work or not if they're ready?
Well, the elephant in the room is often finances dictate whether or not that's something you can even consider. So not being judgmental about people who need to just plow through and continue to work because that's what's paying the mortgage or the rent and putting food on the table. And then otherwise, some of it is how are you doing medically? How are you doing emotionally? And remembering there's some amazing support groups out there with people who get it in ways that, as much as your colleagues might be great, your friends and family might be great, sometimes that need to connect with someone who's been there, been through it, can also really help normalize things. And just knowing your own personality. Are you someone who is going to climb the walls if you're at home and feeling even reasonably up to doing some work? Or are you someone who really needs the time to process physically, mentally, all of those kind of things. So no right answer, just figuring out what's going to work best for you.
Appreciate the conversation, Janine. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you. You take care.
You too. That's Janine Hubbard, registered psychologist, talking about the return to work after a cancer diagnosis and or treatment and the questions that you might ask. It is Thursday morning. Our commute's looking pretty good, actually. Call us, though, if you need us, 788-3093. That's where you can reach Corey. Remember, ongoing reconstruction of 18th Street in Brandon, so that's a huge project, but it did start this week, so note that if that's your city. Coming up, we have business news. We're going to talk about a big business deal in the sports world. Rogers is buying Bell's stake in Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment for $4.7 billion. So Chrisley Ramlichan will break it down after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is a warm start to Thursday. 21 degrees right now in Winnipeg. We begin with sunshine, then clouds are moving in. Good chance of showers late this morning, even a risk of a thunderstorm. Not warming up a lot more than we currently are. A high today of 22. 2 Ethiopian men say Winnipeg Police Patrol Sergeant Jeffrey Norman unlawfully arrested them over what should have been just a parking ticket. Now they are demanding the service do something about it. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargut reports.
The incident happened this past February. Ayala Abeya was driving for Uber when he needed to use the bathroom. He parked his car in a downtown back lane and ran to a nearby convenience store. When he came out, he saw his friend and stopped to say hi. But when he returned to his car, Jeffrey Norman called out to him and asked for his driver's license. When he didn't immediately hand it over, he was arrested. His friend, who had been watching this unfold, mouthed off to Norman and ended up getting arrested too.
I was confused, to be honest with you. I did not know what was going on. Never in my life dreamed this will happen to me in Canada.
Norman arrested the men for obstructing a police officer, but the Crown didn't end up authorizing the charges. They now want Winnipeg police to do something to ensure something like this doesn't happen to anyone else. Norman has been sued 10 times dating back to 2005. The allegations ranging from assault and wrongful arrest to unnecessary use of a taser. Caroline Bargut, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The city of Winnipeg is close to reaching a goal the mayor set to speed up housing development. In his State of the City speech back in February, Scott Gillingham said he wanted the city to approve 8,000 housing units by December. A report to Executive Policy Committee this week says the city has approved more than 7,600 units. And Gillingham says their work is paying off.
All the departments, they're stepping up. They're working very hard to get housing units approved, and so 7,600 units approved towards the 8,000 is a really good start. At this pace, I'm confident that we'll meet that 8,000 target.
The mayor says there's still more work to do. The report shows only 123 of the units approved so far are designated affordable. Gillingham expects that number to rise once the city announces the first round of Housing Accelerator Fund recipients in the next few weeks. The chief administrative officer for the city of Selkirk says a solar glass processing plant proposed for the community would be the largest private investment in its history. Alberta's Canadian Premium Sand is planning to mine silica sand at Hollow Water First Nation and process it in Selkirk. Selkirk CAO Dwayne Nichols says that plant would become the second largest employer in Selkirk after the steel mill.
They're looking at $320 million worth of annual sales. So it's a huge economic driver. In terms of net employment, just for direct jobs, the steel mill would still be a larger employer. But in terms of overall economic impact, it'll have a very comparable amount.
Canadian Premium Sand announced yesterday Ottawa and the province have signed letters of intent to cover almost a third of the project's nearly $900 million cost. That is contingent on other financing coming through. To southeast Manitoba now, where people are assessing the flood damage.
Water was coming in from pretty much all sides, but
Valerie Rosenall lives in Mitchell, just outside Steinbach. Crews have already pumped out the water from her basement. Now, industrial fans are drying it out.
We had about, I would say, seven inches of water in the basement. So everything was covered. It took maybe 10 minutes to rise up to that point, and then there was nothing stopping it, and you're just in a panic to overtakes, and then you just accept it and you figure everything's lost anyway, so you just go with it.
Other areas in the Arm of Hanover were also hit hard by heavy rain this week. The municipality has received hundreds of calls from people dealing with high water. About 50 roads have been washed out in the area, and some local leaders hope the province's disaster assistance program will help people with the cleanup. Now to Lebanon. This man in Beirut says he and his family are now afraid to use their mobile phones. Over the past 2 days, at least 37 people in Lebanon have been killed by exploding pagers or walkie-talkies. Thousands more have been injured. It's believed members of Hezbollah have been the intended targets. Later today, the senior leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, is scheduled to speak publicly about these attacks. Meanwhile, Israel's defense minister has declared the start of the, quote, new phase of the war. Yoav Gallant says the Israeli military is now shifting its focus towards Hezbollah militants. You can hear the latest on that story coming up on World Report at 7. A world-famous photograph of Winston Churchill is now back in Canadian hands. At a ceremony in Rome, that is Yusuf Karsh's iconic portrait of Churchill being officially returned to Canadian authorities. The photo, nicknamed the Roaring Lion, was stolen from the lobby of the Chateau Laurier in Ottawa 2 years ago and replaced with a fake. An Italian lawyer later purchased the portrait at an auction unaware of the theft. An Ontario man has been arrested in connection with that crime. The 1941 photograph is expected to be back in Ottawa in the hotel lobby next month. Almost makes you want to visit the hotel. You can hear more and see more news on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Cheaper to go there, though, to our website and look at
yes,
the picture.
Much.
Than plan a trip. All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby, I saw the most beautiful thing this morning.
Tell me about it.
Coming around the corner, I was on one of the streets traveling through where in my commute, River Heights. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I sort of caught a glimpse out of the corner of my eye. I thought it was a rabbit, on someone's lawn. And I just all of a sudden, all I saw was the movement. So I turned my head left, and there was a sort of a buck with they have the fuzzy antlers. So it was a young buck and 2 doe, and they were on someone's front lawn, like in the middle of the residential area. But I guess the homeowner there had a bird feeder on one of those hooks hanging, and so the deer were like eating out of it and eating the lawn, and the homeowner might not have been pleased, but it was a beautiful sight this morning.
My beautiful sight, that was like really, really, I'm just picturing it in my head. Something similar happened to me yesterday when I go home, just pulling into the driveway. I saw this bunny sipping from a puddle. Yep. And then there was a squirrel also sipping from the same puddle, and the bunny was like, he scooched aside, and then the squirrel had to come to that other side. Like, it's better here.
Like they were sharing the urban watering hole.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah. All the animals getting ready. Well, that's the sign, right? That we're at what season we're in. They're all trying to find water and food and fatten up and prepare for the change in the season. Although, as Corey and I were remarking earlier, it's so strange that we're still so warm right now. What's the temperature currently?
Yeah, I call it extended summer. A mix of of clouds and sunny conditions we're going to be seeing today across the province, with a chance of showers and thunderstorms in several areas. Currently, Winnipeg, 21 degrees, mainly clear outside. We will see a sunny start in the city, but then the clouds will begin to build up, bringing a very good chance of showers and thunderstorms as we get late into the afternoon period, similar to what we saw yesterday. And today's high will only reach 22. Tonight, dust clouds, they will definitely be staying with us all night. As we head to Brandon, 14 at this time, also cloudy out there. We're looking for lots of clouds to roll in for that region also. A slim chance of showers, then it's going to turn breezy this afternoon. You'd only get to a high of 19. Good morning to our friends in Thompson. You are currently 17 at this time. It is cloudy. Today we'll see a good chance of showers and thunderstorms, and the highs will be around 20. Further north in Churchill, 14 at this time. Mostly cloudy conditions you're seeing, but then it's going to turn mainly cloudy, and you'd touch a high of 20. A chance of showers this afternoon also. Dauphin at 17 and mostly cloudy at this time. Today features a mix of sun and clouds, becoming cloudy with showers and thunderstorms later. Highs around 19. Gimli 20. For the Interlake region today, you should be seeing mainly sunny skies, a slim chance of showers, and a high of 22. Steinbach is at 21. Today will also start mainly sunny, becoming cloudy as you get into the day. There's a chance of showers. The high is around 22. Morris at 22 at this point. For the rest of the Pembina Valley region, we should be seeing mainly sunny starts and a high of 23. Winnipeg, it's a warm start. It's going to be... We're just going to get to a high of 22.
Yeah. So we're not moving much from our current temperature, but the daytime normal for this time of year is on average 19.
It's 19,
so,
yeah.
Even at this hour, 6:39 a.m., we're already above that. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, the commute.
Yeah, very straightforward commute so far. I haven't heard of any major issues out there. As you mentioned earlier, there's paving going on 18th Street in Brandon. But other than that, it's pretty quiet here in Winnipeg. But if you do see something going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Chrisley Ramlakan joins us now via Zoom for our business news. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Marcy. When you guys were talking about the animals, I was like, it's like Snow White over there in Manitoba.
I know, right? Especially the image Abby drew of all the animals gathering around the puddle.
Yeah.
Let's start with a big deal, and I mean big monetarily. Big news about a deal in the sports and entertainment world. So Rogers is buying Bell's stake in Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment for $4.7 billion. What could all this mean for fans?
Well, sports business experts say the landmark deal could lead to better but pricier experiences for fans. So Rogers already owns part of the sports conglomerate that owns the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Raptors, the Argonauts, and the soccer team, the Toronto FC. And the deal would make Rogers the majority owner of MLSE with 75% of the business. So the other part is owned by Larry Tenenbaum. And Rogers already owns the Toronto Blue Jays as well. So the deal opens the door to bringing pretty much every major Toronto sports franchise under one umbrella, especially because the ownership agreement reportedly allows the telecoms to buy out Tenenbaum by July of 2026. So we could see cross-marketing of ticket sales for the teams. The Rogers Centre has seen $400 million in renovations recently. That could be replicated at the Scotiabank Arena, but ticket prices could go up with this kind of, monopoly. Here's Estee Fresco, who's an assistant professor at York University and specializes in sports media.
It absolutely reduces competition between media companies and also changes how MLSE operates as a vertically and horizontally integrated company that will certainly have implications for how the company is run and the decisions that are made on a whole range of potential factors, from timing of games to the kind of cultural significance and presence of sports teams like the Raptors.
But Bell has kept some things in this deal. So it has secured the ability to renew content rights to half of all regional Maple Leafs games and half of Raptors games, which would continue to air on TSN for the next 20 years. Bell will remain the official telecom sponsor of the Raptors. And it will maintain its sponsorships of the Argonauts and the Toronto FC. Now, this deal is expected to close in the middle of next year, but it is still subject to approvals.
Let's go to another story. Canada's transport regulator is testing out an idea right now to charge airlines millions of dollars as a way to reduce passenger complaints. So what are the details here?
Well, this strategy proposes charging airlines $790 for each passenger complaint it resolves, regardless of which party wins the dispute. So the Canadian Transportation Agency has launched a 1-month consultation on these potential changes, which would apply to valid customer complaints processed and settled by the regulator. So the agency estimates it will be able to close just over 22,000 air travel complaints per year. And that's going to amount to roughly $18 million in fees charged to the airlines. And it says the charges aim to cover about 60% of the projected almost $30 million annual cost of handling these eligible complaints. And those expenses stem largely from the salaries and benefits for the agency's resolution officers. Now, while the fees could dissuade airlines from, breaking the rules, a passenger rights advocate says the measure comes too little, too late, and fails to serve as an adequate disincentive. So the transport agency says its backlog of complaints now sits at a record high of 78,000. So if you are waiting for your complaint to be resolved, you're probably going to be waiting for a while. And that is driven in part by unprecedented tallies last year amid ongoing traveler frustrations.
So interesting that the tactic here is to charge the airlines no matter who wins the complaint. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So hopefully, they can operate in a way where they won't get any complaints.
That's the goal, obviously. And finally, before you look at markets this morning, there's a bank right now that's warning millions of people could be targeted by these AI voice cloning scams, which we've talked about before. Where is this developing?
Yes. So a UK bank, Starling Bank, says fraudsters are capable of using artificial intelligence to replicate a person's voice from just 3 seconds of audio found in, for example, a video a person has posted online. So the scammers can then use the cloned voice to call family and friends and then ask for money. And the bank says this has already affected hundreds of people. In a recent survey from the bank of more than 3,000 adults, more than a quarter said they have already been targeted by AI voice cloning scams in the past year. So the bank is encouraging people to agree to a safe phrase with their loved ones, a simple, random phrase that's easy to remember and different from their other passwords that can be used to verify someone's identity over the phone. So the lender advises against sharing that safe phrase over text, which could make it easier for scammers to find out. And if you have to do that, just make sure you delete the message after.
We're all in trouble, right? Everyone who's worked in radio always shakes in their boots every time you do a story on AI cloning voices.
I know. Yeah. Well, if any of my family or friends, get called for money from me, they'll just know that I don't have it to give. So it's a scam.
All right, let's get into the market numbers this morning. What do they say?
So in Europe, markets are higher as investors digested the U.S. Federal Reserve's first interest rate cut in 4 years. So Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, markets are gaining. So Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all up. Oil is up 64 cents to $71.55 US per barrel. Gold is up 29.10 to $2,587.30 US per ounce. And the dollar is up more than a third of a cent to 73.9 cents US.
All right, Crystalie, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
That's Crystalie Ramlicam with business news this morning, 6:47 a.m. right now. And she was just saying, that she may not have money to give. Maybe you don't either. Next on the show, we are all guilty of overspending. It can happen when we least expect it. Personal finance columnist Rabina Ahmed Huq this morning says, as we head into one of the most expensive few months of the year, it's important to try to control the urge to splurge.
Starting now, several events can throw our budget off track by the end of the year. Thanksgiving, Halloween, and the big ones, Christmas and New Year. And that's on top of all the regular spending we have in between.
My name's Carrie Hayes, and I'm a cash flow and budgeting expert.
Carrie Hayes is the founder of the website betterbudgets.ca. She works with clients to help them spend mindfully and control overspending.
This is something I get asked often as a budgeting coach, And the first thing I tell my clients is to spend some time figuring out what your magpie items are. A magpie item is a thing that you tend to buy habitually, but you don't necessarily need more of this thing. So developing an awareness of what those things are for you will help you put strategies in place to manage them.
This is when someone collects items of little value or use. It can be anything from baseball hats or kitchen gadgets, or items you buy only because you have become used to buying them, not because you actually need them. She says to recognize when you overspend to learn for the next time.
So, for example, you may notice that you're overspending on Uber Eats and you feel bad about it. And upon reflection, you might notice that you tend to order when you're feeling overtired. It's hard to put strategies in place if you haven't figured out what that feeling is that you're trying to achieve. So once you have that, then you can put strategies in place to manage it.
Hayes says saving money and avoiding overspending has to be practiced. By working on being more mindful of the smaller items you tend to buy habitually, you will be better able to manage your overspending overall. This helps you stop and think about what you're buying and if you actually need it. Hayes has a rule called Buy for Life. Everything she purchases has to last a long time.
So it's a pro-spending approach, but only if the math looks good.
Leslie Ann Scorgi is the founder of MeVest, a personal finance company that helps clients get out of debt and build their wealth. She says good financial management starts with controlling your overspending and buying quality items. She has a $1 trick anyone can use to control what they buy.
If you take the cost of something and you divide it by the number of uses, and if that number is less than $1, then you go ahead and you buy it. I think of some of the expenses that I've certainly had that have been really valuable, like good quality bed sheets, even really good shoes. You pay up for some of that stuff and then you use it so many times that the cost per use is really quite affordable. So kind of a different perspective on spending. It may be, less restrictive and slightly more sustainable.
Scorgi says this trick keeps you from buying items only because they're on sale or unnecessary items you'll use a few times. She also recommends the 24-hour rule. If there's an item you want to buy that was not in your budget, take 24 hours to decide if you want or need it. Impulse shopping costs Canadians thousands of dollars a year, according to these experts. Often referred to as retail therapy, they say we spend because it gives us that temporary dopamine boost. But long term, this can hurt your finances, especially if you're already in debt. Their advice: delete all the credit card information on your shopping apps. This one step before you purchase can be enough time to realize you don't need it. Don't browse or window shop online or in person. You're likely to buy for no reason. Have a budget for spontaneous purchases so you don't feel deprived. As we head into the most expensive time of year, controlling your overspending will help you save more money and stay out of unnecessary debt. For CBC Radio, I'm Rubina Ahmed Haq.
Excellent advice. I, like probably a lot of people listening, need some of that advice. It is 9 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcoux, so you're listening to Information Radio here on CBC, your morning show. We're on until 8:37 a.m. and this morning we are expecting some more rain, and we're going to start a little bit clear and sunny, but then late this morning a system could move back in. Well, next on the show, let's talk politics, because at the federal level, there sure is a lot of discussion about the possibility of an election. And it's coming from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who's pushing for one. He's going to table a non-confidence motion against the Liberal government that reads, quote, "The House has no confidence in the Prime Minister and the government," end quote. Then it will be up to the opposition parties to vote for or against that motion, which could possibly trigger an election. Linda Miljan is here to talk about it, professor of political science at the University of Windsor. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what do you make of the non-confidence motion right now and how it's worded?
It is simple. I mean, there's no way to misunderstand what the Conservatives are looking for. And it's also interesting that it's not focused on any one particular issue. So it's sort of setting it up that the opposition parties can just focus on an up or down vote rather than get mired into what the ballot box question might be.
Can I ask you specifically about the Bloc? Because the Bloc leader yesterday, the Bloc Québécois, said that his party would not vote in favor of the motion. Is that a sign the Bloc is willing to prop up the Liberals for the time being or not?
Oh, absolutely. I think as soon as the NDP, dramatically tore up the agreement with the Liberals, the Bloc leader Blanchette said, "Oh, well, this is an opportunity now for Quebec. Maybe we can find a way to work with the Liberals to help Quebec interests." And he's been very clear, very honest that he doesn't care about the petty politics of Canadians. He's only interested in what he can do for Quebec. And so he's essentially said, we don't really care for this government, but for now, we're willing to see what we can do, and it'll be on a case-by-case basis. And so right now he's thinking that he might be able to get some joy out of the Liberals.
What does the NDP do with this, especially because when they tore up that agreement and they, Jagmeet Singh was out there saying, we don't trust this government. So now this is worded, the House has no confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. What kind of position has the language of this put the NDP in, and what do you think they're going to do with it?
Yeah, I think that's what the language is for. It's really directed towards the NDP, and it's a challenge to them from the Conservatives to say, put your money where your mouth is. But let's remember, what was the motivation for the NDP to tear up the agreement? It wasn't that the Liberals didn't deliver. We got the watered down pharmacare bill. There's, a little bit of a dental care bill. So they got what their demands were. But what they were hearing when they were door knocking this summer in those two by-elections is people at the door saying, how can you continue to support a government like this? And I think that was their motivation. It was to hold on to the Winnipeg seat and maybe make some breakthroughs in the Montreal riding, which they were successful at. I mean, it was a tight three-way race in Montreal, and they were able just barely to hang on to that Winnipeg seat. So now they've succeeded in that. They're saying that they want to have an election, and so far as Mr. Singh has talked about, being the next Prime Minister of Canada. But at the same time, they're also having the squeeze by the Liberals, who said, well, wait a minute, if you want your progressive agenda, you're not going to get it with the Conservatives. So I suspect that they're probably going to vote with the government this time and have to deal with the political consequences later on.
What kind of pushback right now, if any, have we seen from the Liberal cabinet so far?
Well, they've been, very confident. And I think because they know the math. They know that no one political party has the power to topple them, that all three have to band together. They're also pretty much aware that both the NDP, as much as they're not happy with the Liberals, equally aren't looking forward to a strong Conservative majority government. So I think they're fairly confident. And in fact, Karina Gould, the House leader for the Liberals, really was putting the squeeze on the NDP, saying, well, if you want your progressive agenda, this is the only path forward for you. So they're fairly confident moving into this fall session, and in fact, so confident that they were the ones that set the date for this vote. It's the government that gets to decide on opposition days, and they could have stack them all at the end of the session. But no, they gave the Conservatives their day this week, in a part to really test the ability of the NDP and the Bloc on whether or not they were going to continue to support the government, because they did in the past. If you think about the last non-confidence motion that the Conservatives put forward, both the Bloc and the NDP supported the government over the Conservatives.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's the last time we'll be talking about this. No, it won't be.
Yeah, no.
Thanks.
I think I'm in business for quite some time here.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Nice speaking with you.
And I misspoke. I apologize. My guest has been Lydia Miljan, professor and department head of political science at the University of Windsor and senior fellow with the Fraser Institute, which is in Windsor, Ontario, where we reached her. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock now. Heather Wells joins us with news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. The city of Winnipeg is close to reaching a goal the mayor set to speed up housing development. In his State of the City speech back in February, Scott Gillingham said he wanted the city to approve 8 8,000 housing units by December. Well, a report to Executive Policy Committee this week says the city has approved more than 7,600 units. The mayor says there is still more work to be done. People in the Arm of Hanover near Steinbach are cleaning up the mess left by this week's heavy rain. Some had almost 18 meters in their basement. The municipalities received hundreds of calls and about 50 roads have been washed out. Local leaders are hoping the province disaster assistance program will help people with their cleanups. We'll hear more about what's going on there and around the province coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, unfortunately, we do have a rainy system that is going to be affecting us today again. We'll start sunny in Winnipeg, but increasing cloud this morning, 60% chance of showers late this morning, risk of a thunderstorm as well with that. So a high of 22, and it'll be windy too. Winds will be south 30 to 50. So a lot of southern Manitoba with a chance of showers. Right now in the city, it is 21 degrees in Winnipeg. 18th Street reconstruction on your commute in Brandon. So a reminder that's going to be ongoing for a number of weeks, but it just did start this week, so we'll mention it. Otherwise, so far so good so early on the commute. 788-3093 to reach us here at CBC. Well, Heather was just talking about the city of Winnipeg, and the mayor is saying they're on track for housing starts to be built, affordable houses and spaces. However, in the meantime, we have encampments all over the city. And we're going to ask the mayor in our regular monthly interview in the next hour, should Winnipeg move to designated areas for houseless encampments? That's just one of the questions on tap for our interview. So Scott Gillingham will be here live in studio in the next hour. Also, in the next hour of Information Radio, Canadian Medical Association yesterday made an apology for the ongoing discrimination and harm done to First Nations and Indigenous people in Canada. We're going to hear it from a nurse from northern Manitoba who says this is a step in the right direction. There is more that needs to be done, so we'll hear her story. Stay with us for that. Right now, World Report is next. It's 1 minute to 7 o'clock, and you're listening to CBC.
Today on The Current.
My life revolves around managing my legs and experiencing pain every day.
A Nova Scotia woman is applying for medically assisted death because her province doesn't offer treatment for her debilitating disease and won't cover the cost for her to get help elsewhere. One woman's fight to live free of pain, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. In Beirut's main airport, pagers and walkie-talkies are banned. Elsewhere in the country, they're being destroyed in controlled environments. Officials are on high alert after hundreds of Hezbollah devices detonated over the past 2 days. At least 37 people were killed. Thousands more have been injured. And later this morning, we will learn how Hezbollah will respond. Senior leader Hassan Nasrallah is expected to speak. Let's go to the CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. And Sasha, what's the latest on these attacks?
Well, yesterday's second round hit people in Lebanon very, very hard, not just because of the increased numbers of people who've been hit, but also psychologically. People are afraid of anything that is technological and just waiting for whatever it is that Israel, from their perspective, might do next. This is, for instance, what an internal medicine specialist had to say after treating people. Her name is Dania El Halak.
They had puncture wounds on their faces. They had amputated limbs. They had open abdomens, intestines out, bowels out. It was the first time I ever see wounds like that.
Now, the New York Times is reporting today the devices that exploded were provided to Hezbollah by Israel itself. That Israeli intelligence, hiding behind a number of shell companies, had caught on to the fact that the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, was putting out orders that the organization should move to lower tech devices because he was afraid that cell phones were too easy to track. So he ordered these pagers to be bought. And when they actually came from Israel and they were all set to explode. That is what the investigation by the New York Times has come up with.
We're hearing a lot of concern this will ignite a full-blown war between Israel and Hezbollah. Is there any sign that could happen?
There are indications both sides are preparing for this. In Israel itself today, there was an attack from the Lebanese side using guided anti-tank missiles. 8 were injured on the Israeli side. And Israel itself launched airstrikes and 1 drone strike this morning against a weapons depot. So that has been going on. But we are seeing signs that it's going to escalate. For instance, the powerful 98th Division of the Israeli army, they have been moved up to the northern border. Now, it's not 100% clear whether this is being done to attack or whether it's being done in anticipation of whatever it is that Hezbollah might do on the other side as a defensive measure.
Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusik reporting from Jerusalem. We are learning more about how foreign countries meddle in Canadian democracy. Here is former Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole testifying at the Foreign Interference Committee.
Chinese interference is more like a scalpel on a riding level, whereas Russian misinformation is more chaos generating. They want us just fighting and making democracy look ineffective.
O'Toole and others are criticizing the government for being slow to react. The CBC's Evan Dyer has more on what we have learned about China's specific operations.
I was approached by an individual who offered to provide political support and assistance.
Conservative foreign affairs critic Michael Chong said he soon realized the would-be volunteer was someone who'd been fired from the Privy Council office years before for working for China. He took the information both to CSIS and the National Security Advisor.
And I was informed that all the documents for this individual had been destroyed and that they had no information on this individual.
New Democrat Jenny Kwan told the inquiry how her outspoken criticism of China's Communist Party caused blowback from Chinese diplomats.
You know, there were some changes in people's behavior towards me.
Kwan says she worries about the next election, but won't stop talking about China and Hong Kong.
I have a platform here in Canada, in a democratic society. If I don't stand up and speak for those who are being silenced, then I may as well just be part of that, and I won't accept it.
Former Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole told the inquiry about a former senator in his own party who'd raised flags with paid trips to China and advocacy on behalf of a Chinese state-owned company. The senator wasn't named during proceedings, but Conservative sources suggested to CBC News that the reference was to retired Conservative Senator Victor O. CBC reached out to Victor O., who denied acting against Canadian interests. Conservative Chong and New Democrat Kwan agreed on the need for a foreign agent registry, and both criticized the current government for not making that happen. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
Russia's government is trying to raise the country's sinking birth rate. For years, it has been pushing for larger families, saying more children help create a stronger Russia. Now some regions are rolling out new measures. Briar Stewart has the story.
As Russia's President Vladimir Putin spoke at the Eurasian Women's Forum, he told the crowd that women can achieve the ultimate balance, managing a professional career and domestic life.
And being the true soul of a large family with numerous children.
In recent months, Russian officials have ratcheted up their push for larger families. One regional health minister proclaimed that having a busy career was no excuse for not having children, and that people could, quote, make offspring on their work breaks. 2 other regions have started programs where women under the age of 25 and full-time students are given a financial incentive if they become a new mom.
The main propaganda and main message, women should start bearing children earlier.
Alexei Raksha is an independent demographer based in Moscow. He said Russia's sinking birth rate comes at the same time as higher mortality among younger men because of the war in Ukraine. He is supportive of a new program in Moscow which invites all women under the age of 40 for free fertility testing and, if needed, egg freezing. But Lada Sharmadina, a Russian medical journalist, said some women found the unsolicited invites invasive.
Some women even compare it with Handmaid's Tale.
She says while some women will benefit from the program, others have a deep distrust of the government and believe the decision to have children should be theirs alone. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Sudden cardiac arrest kills about 60,000 people every year in this country, but it often happens to young, active, and otherwise healthy people, and often with no warning signs. Now some Canadian researchers have uncovered a cause that explains some cardiac arrests, and they've found a way of testing for it. Mike Crawley has more.
The discovery began with 3 siblings from southwestern Ontario. All athletic, all suffered sudden cardiac arrest by their mid-30s. 2 of them fatal, and no one could find out why.
We had no answers for them.
Cardiologist Jason Roberts works at McMaster University in Hamilton.
And we had no idea whether or not we'd wake up the next day and we'd hear that a brother or sister had had a similarly tragic fate.
A heart attack is about damage to the heart's muscle. Cardiac arrest is triggered by a fault in the heart's electrical system. DNA analysis showed the siblings all had an alteration to one gene, but it was unclear how the gene was triggering cardiac arrests. Roberts helps lead the team that figured it out.
To burst open, release a huge amount of calcium into
The researchers call it calcium release deficiency syndrome, a previously unknown disease that wasn't apparent on the usual tests. They've now developed a way to detect it on an electrocardiogram. University of Calgary microbiologist Wayne Chen.
I'm really happy for the work that we have done. Can be, benefit to humans so quickly.
It's really quite impressive what they've done.
Dr. Mally Warm is a cardiologist at Toronto's University Health Network. She was not involved in the research.
I think it can add potentially to the future diagnostic tools we have for what would otherwise be an unexplained cardiac arrest.
Chen and Roberts say there's still much to learn about the syndrome, including what portion of sudden cardiac arrests it causes. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Hamilton, Ontario.
At a ceremony in Rome this morning, the world-famous portrait of Winston Churchill was officially returned to Canadian authorities. It's nicknamed the Roaring Lion. It was stolen from the Chateau Laurier in Ottawa and replaced with a fake. The exact date of the theft is not known, but it happened sometime between Christmas 2021 and January 6th, 2022. An Italian lawyer bought the portrait at an auction unaware of the theft. An Ontario man has been arrested in connection with the crime, and the photograph is expected to return to its place on the walls of the Chateau Laurier next month. And if you want to read more about this story, Paul Hunter, who was instrumental in helping to locate this photo, has more on the story on our main page at cbcnews.ca. You can read about his role in this brazen theft. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app, and on YouTube, 7:10 AM. Partly cloudy. We've been at 21 degrees. We'll find out more about the forecast in a moment. And yes, we do have some more rain expected today. This hour on the program, the mayor of the city of Winnipeg will be on the show. We're going to ask him about a number of different things. He's here for our regular monthly interview, including building on a conversation we had yesterday out of the city of Hamilton, where they have protocols for houseless encampments in place, and they're looking at the idea of sanctioned encampments. Would that work here? So we'll ask the mayor about that. In addition, he calls it, Scott Gillingham does, one of the biggest downtown developments in generations. So we're going to ask more about the redevelopment of Portage Place this hour and what he wants to see in a new police chief, which will lead us right into headlines. Stay with us here for a moment. So that's an important question because the mayor sits on the police board, and right now they are considering who will be the next police chief. They're the ones that will be making that decision, the Board of People. And there's continually stories and calls from community for what they want to see in police. We have an I-Team investigation today to tell you about, and Heather Wells is in with headlines on it. Hi there, Heather.
Hi there, yes. A Winnipeg police officer with a history of allegations of misconduct is now being accused of wrongful arrest. Two Ethiopian men say Winnipeg Police Patrol Sergeant Jeffrey Norman unlawfully arrested them over what they say should have just been a parking ticket. They are now demanding the service do something about it. So we'll hear more on that coming up in the news and, as you say, right here on Information Radio. The city of Selkirk is welcoming federal and provincial help towards the construction of a solar glass processing facility in that community. Alberta's Canadian Premium Sands announced yesterday Ottawa and the province have signed letters of intent to cover almost a third of the project's nearly $900 million cost. Selkirk CAO Dwayne Nickel says that plant would become the second largest employer in Selkirk after the steel mill. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into our forecast now with Abby Adiyemi.
It's a warm start to Thursday with the temperature in Winnipeg sitting at 21 degrees. Expect plenty of sunshine to begin the day, but the clouds will roll in as we move into the late morning period, bringing a good chance of showers late this morning into the afternoon. We have a risk of thunderstorm also to go with that, and we won't be warming up much more than our current temperature because we're just going to get to 22 today. There's a chance of showers, a risk of thunderstorm, and that's going to continue into the evening. And across the province, we're seeing temperatures ranging to 23 in Morris, which will also be seeing a mix of sun and clouds. Up north, cloudy conditions, we're seeing 17 and 14 in Churchill and Thompson, and down south, we're seeing 14s all the way to 21 from Brandon to Morris. Winnipeg, warm start, 21, heading to a high of 22.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
On the commute, Corey, what do we have?
A very quiet commute so far this morning. Haven't heard of any major issues, but if you're out there, you're walking, biking, driving, you see something, give me a call on that CBC commuter line. The number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, the Canadian Medical Association has apologized to First Nations and Indigenous people for harms caused by the medical profession. The apology was issued in a ceremony in Victoria yesterday. Here's part of the apology that was made by Winnipeg doctor and CMA president, Dr. Joss Reimer.
As an association, our purpose is to support the medical profession and create a more sustainable, accessible, and equitable health system for all patients and providers. In failing to address systemic anti-Indigenous racism in healthcare, we have failed to fulfill this purpose. We have not lived up to the ethical standards the medical profession is expected to uphold to ensure the highest standard of care is provided to patients and trust is fostered in patients, in physicians, residents, and medical students. We realize we have left Indigenous peoples out of that high standard of care. To Indigenous peoples living in Canada, we apologize to you. We are sorry. We are sorry we have lost your trust and for the harms that you, your ancestors, your families, and your communities have experienced. We acknowledge there are ripple effects on future generations. We take ownership of the CMA's history, and we are committed to righting our wrongs and rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of trust, accountability, and reciprocity.
So that was part of the apology made by CMA President Dr. Joss Reimer yesterday, addressing specific examples also of harms, including systemic racism, discrimination against patients, and forced or coerced sterilization, saying there, quote, "We have left Indigenous peoples out of that high standard of care," end quote. Tina Campbell is my next guest via Zoom. Tina says this apology is a step in the right direction. There, of course, is more to be done. Tina's a registered nurse herself from Mosekekin Cree Nation, which is also known as Moose Lake. So that's about 460 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg. She does now live in Saskatchewan, and that's where we've reached her this morning, as I mentioned, via Zoom. Hi to you.
Hello.
You have this beautiful story about your initial thoughts when you first heard the CMA will be making the apology, and it has to do, I understand, with something that you actually made for a fellow colleague that was there yesterday during this. Can you share that?
Yep. So at the beginning of August, I was contacted by a former colleague of mine that I worked closely with in Nunavut when I was there up nursing as a TB nurse. And she told me about this ceremony that was happening and this apology that the Canadian Medical Association was going to do in BC. And she really wanted some guidance on she wanted to, I guess, she wanted my opinion or my guidance on how to represent, Indigenous culture, her ties to the North, and tuberculosis as well. So I offered to make her a ribbon skirt, which I just started learning how to make in my culture. So I made her a ribbon skirt, and I reached out to my cousin Valine, who is a very amazing and talented beader. And we came up with this design of lungs. So she wore it. She shared a picture yesterday, and she just looked beautiful. But we just wanted to tie that Indigenous culture and our tie to tuberculosis care for her. So when I learned about this apology, I started to kind of research, and I think it's excellent that it took place yesterday. I was able to tune in to some portions of it. I was busy in meetings all day, but it was really well done.
Obviously, you absorbed the apology as a medical professional yourself, as a nurse, but I understand you also absorbed it thinking, maybe reflecting on a personal experience that happened to you in the medical system. In so much as you don't mind sharing, I believe you were 17 when this, when this happened, and it still stays with you.
Yeah, so I was a university student, so I lived in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and I was a student actually in Saskatchewan. And accessing care, I'm visibly Indigenous, and I feel like sometimes I do experience discrimination up front. I've experienced it my whole life now that I've come to learn what discrimination is. And I had actually shared an experience last year with CPC about, I had gone for a simple medical procedure, but in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, okay, I must look presentable. I must look, like I know kind of what I'm doing, I guess, just because I wanted to be treated in a way that I'd get the best care possible, which is unfortunate. But it's because of that experience when I was younger that kind of still follows with me today. And, when you think about that personal experience of mine and how it still continues to affect me, I'm in my 30s now. You really understand how experiences from family members previous to us, those feelings about healthcare and that mistrust can be passed down through generations. So,
especially as you so eloquently said just now, right? You said, I'm not going to say it as well as you did, but you said you know what it was now. You can name it as discrimination now upon reflection. But in that moment when you're 17 and you went in the office and somehow you felt that they weren't seeing you as someone who, they weren't seeing you. They weren't hearing you. Did you feel dismissed, I understand, in that moment?
Yes, because when, I view it as if somebody's coming to a healthcare professional, to a clinic, they want help. They're there because they don't know what to do, and people are at their most vulnerable when they're not feeling well. So it's really important to welcome everybody with that compassion and understanding and equality. People are scared as well when they don't understand what's going on with them. So it really is the approach, and it goes from there's all these views and it's because of all the stuff that's happened in the past, all the, institutions and the views that the government had placed in these policies as well, that are very racist and discriminatory, unfortunately. And as a healthcare provider, that's a big reason why I came into healthcare, was because I wanted to be a safer place for Indigenous peoples when they're accessing care, to see me and, hey, I'm one of you, and hopefully, working with my non-Indigenous colleagues and educating them on why things might be a certain way with Indigenous people accessing healthcare.
You mentioned that you felt in this situation, what sparked you to go into healthcare in part was also what you experienced, that you felt brushed off. But why did you say you sort of thought about afterwards, dressing in a different way before you go to an appointment and such? How does that relate to how you were treated in the doctor's office?
Well, I was a student at the time, so I was unwell too. So I was probably looking a little, in sweatpants and really unwell, and I just was not treated very well. So that kind of deferred me from accessing healthcare while I was down here going to school. And it was completely different when I would go and access care when I went back home for the summers and whatnot. So, and as a healthcare provider today, unfortunately, I still hear those experiences. I work with First Nations community members, and a lot of the time, we have to refer them because there's no access to certain services in these communities. We have to refer them to city centers or other provincial communities, and they're scared because of the discrimination they face when they go to the hospitals. And I work in tuberculosis, and there's still that huge stigma around that as well. So, they can feel it when people have certain views or don't necessarily want to provide the same care to them for whatever reason.
Because you were stereotyped and judged, and I understand they even somehow they offered you pain medication right away or something that had nothing to do with you seeking answers for what was going on with you.
Yes. Yeah.
You said that part of what motivates you to do your work now is to be there as people see you as a nurse, and you can also educate colleagues. We were started by looking at the apology. We only heard part of it this morning. What is still left to be that you would still like to hear, even though you said you appreciated the apology, and you were able to take it all in yesterday? What would you still? Where do we go from here now?
Well, as we know, in 2015, we had the Truth and Reconciliation released the 94 calls to action. And from 18 to 24, those are specific to health, and specifically call 24. And that, just states that medical professionals, educational facilities teach the history and the historical treatment of Indigenous people within the healthcare system and education systems, and so that people are aware and can tailor their care and have understanding and compassion for the populations that they're serving. Another huge reason why I became a nurse as well, and specifically in tuberculosis, was my grandmother and my aunt were sent to TB sanatoriums in Fort Capel in the 50s, and learning about their experiences as well, and how that kind of affected their trust in systems as well. And people say historical, and I try to use that term lightly because my aunt is still alive today. So that I don't really consider that historical if these survivors are still, walking and breathing and carrying these experiences. And
we have to be mindful of the use of that word.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did she watch the apology yesterday?
I have not been able to see if she has or not, but I definitely will check in.
We really appreciate you being so open with us, Tina, sharing your personal experiences and, of course, your experiences now as a nurse and the ongoing work that you are doing. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
That's via Zoom live with us this morning. Tina Campbell, registered nurse from Muskegon Cree Nation, also known as Moose Lake. She now lives in Saskatchewan. If you want to read more about the apology that the CMA made yesterday, you can see it and find links to the full apology on our website nationally at cbc.ca. It is now 7:25 a.m. and we need to switch gears here on CBC and just have a quick look at the weather, and we'll get into sports next. Mostly cloudy now in Winnipeg. 21 degrees is what we have, and still warmer than usual. A high of 22, so we won't move much, but the average high this time of year is 19. It's going to start, maybe we'll see some sunshine to start, but then this afternoon the clouds are going to move in again, and we are expecting a 60% chance of late morning showers. I keep saying afternoon, but it's late morning showers that we could be seeing in Winnipeg. It is time for sports. As I mentioned, it's the eve of the week in the week 16 in the CFL with a couple of interesting storylines when it comes to the Bombers. Let's start there with Scott Regehr. Hi, Scott.
Yeah, hi, Marcy. Yeah, that's right. Despite the abysmal start to the season Winnipeg had, they're now atop the Western Division standings, albeit by a small margin. A win against the Elks on Saturday will help further solidify their position. The other thing to watch Saturday, for me anyway, is going to be the matchup between Fords. Tyrell Ford, the defensive back for the Bombers, is going to get a chance to face his twin brother, Trey Ford, for the first time as professionals. He's the quarterback for the Elks, of course, Trey Ford. Considering they've been in the league a combined 5 years and 58 games, it might seem like they should have matched up earlier. However, Trey was still trying to establish himself during their rookie campaign. And last year, Tyrell wasn't in the league. He was trying to land a gig in the NFL. Now, while both brothers are relishing this opportunity, it has left former coach and father Bobby Ford in a bit of a quandary, Marcy. Tyrell told the Winnipeg Sun that his dad called him to try to figure out whether he should get a split Edmonton-Winnipeg jersey with both their numbers on it. And Tyrell said, don't waste your money. We play these guys twice. So when we're in Edmonton, you can wear Trey's jersey. When they come here, you can wear my jersey. It's that simple. Save yourself some money. So it'll be Trey Ford's jersey Dad wears this week.
Nice. Thanks for explaining it. Yeah. That's a challenge. What a challenge to have, though. Lots of talent in that family. To another story, there's been a seismic shift in the Canadian sports landscape. We covered a bit of this morning on Business News, just so you know, Scott. What are your thoughts on Rogers buying out Bell's stake of the Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment then?
Well, first off, Marcy, let's take a moment to appreciate just how big an entity Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment is. Last year, Forbes ranked it 10th in the world when it comes to sports empires. That's what happens when you own iconic franchises like the Leafs and the Raptors, not to mention the Argos and Toronto FC. The list goes on. With Rogers buying out Bell's 37.5% share of MLSE, the empire should move even further up those Forbes rankings. If Rogers wants to bring in a new superstar player for the Raptors, for instance, they're not going to have to clear it with Bell going forward. Kerry Kaplan is the president of the marketing firm Cosmos Sports and Entertainment.
Will Rogers step up and spend based on the financial capacity that company has? That's the ticket. There's a direct correlation. The fields in those sports are tilted. If you spend, you will win more. It would have been difficult with Bell. It could be exciting if Rogers spends with the Yankees and Dodgers and Lakers, which is what they should.
Many believe an increasingly Rogers-dominated MLSE could lead to an NFL team in Toronto. Chairman Ed Rogers has long coveted one. And another thing to consider, Marcy, in a couple of years, Rogers can buy out Larry Tannenbaum's 20% stake of MLSE and all but own things outright. So get ready for the dominoes to fall. And many believe that could include a guy that Tannenbaum has long backed over the years, Raptors president Masai Ujiri. So something to watch out for.
Finally, what stands out from you from what was a really busy day yesterday in soccer?
And City will have to settle for an opening day draw.
Disappointing start to Manchester City's Champions League campaign, Marcy. They were playing at home, the English champions, and they were held to a scoreless draw by the Italian champs, Inter Milan. They've had a rough go of late, City. They face possible expulsion from the Premiership for years of questionable financial dealings. In addition to that tie yesterday, one of their best players, the Spanish midfielder Rodri, says players could go on strike soon because they're asked to play too many matches. So that continues to be a story to watch.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott.
You bet.
Talk to you tomorrow. Scott Reguera with Morning Sports here on CBC. If you need us on your commute, 788-3093. So far, so good. And we're at 7:30, so that's pretty good. If you do want to reach out, though, 788-3093. Our regular monthly interview with Mayor Scott Gillingham is up after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. Still warm, 21 degrees. We're going to see some clouds move in this morning, and again, a good chance of showers today. Windy with a high of 22. Two Ethiopian men say Winnipeg Police Patrol Sergeant Jeffrey Norman unlawfully arrested them over what should have just been a parking ticket. Now they're demanding the police service do something about it. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargu reports.
The incident happened this past February. Ayala Abeya was driving for Uber when he needed to use the bathroom. He parked his car in a downtown back lane and ran to a nearby convenience store. When he came out, he saw his friend and stopped to say hi. But when he returned to his car, Jeffrey Norman called out to him and asked for his driver's license. When he didn't immediately hand it over, he was arrested. His friend, who had been watching this unfold, mouthed off to Norman and ended up getting arrested too.
I was confused, to be honest with you. I did not know what was going on. Never in my life dreamed this will happen to me in Canada.
Norman arrested the men for obstructing a police officer, but the Crown didn't end up authorizing the charges. They now want Winnipeg police to do something to ensure something like this doesn't happen to anyone else. Norman has been sued 10 times dating back to 2005. The allegations ranging from assault and wrongful arrest to unnecessary use of a taser. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Winnipeg.
You can hear more on this story with Caroline coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. A goal set by the mayor of Winnipeg to speed up housing construction has nearly been reached. Scott Gillingham called on the city to approve 8,000 units by December. A new report from the city shows more than 7,600 have been approved so far. Gillingham calls it a good start, but says there's more work to do.
This is putting a good dent into the number of housing units we need. But as we look at the population growth of Winnipeg, we look at the fact that the vacancy rate is below 2%. There is more that we need to do to get more housing built quickly.
The report says only about 2,600 of the approved housing units have building permits. That is the key thing the city has to measure to qualify for tens of millions of dollars from the Housing Accelerator Fund. The city needs to reach 14,000 units by December 2026. The city of Selkirk is welcoming federal and provincial help towards the construction of a solar glass processing facility in that community. Alberta's Canadian Premium Sands announced yesterday Ottawa and the province signed letters of intent to cover almost a third of the project's nearly $900 million cost. That is contingent, however, on other financing coming through. Selkirk CAO Dwayne Nichols says the government subsidies would help Canada keep pace with green economy projects south of the border.
At the end of the day, this brings us that much closer to achieving the project. Right now with the amount of money that's going into being thrown at American firms, in the States, this puts CPS on the kind of equal footing.
The project includes the construction of a 50,000 square foot processing facility in Selkirk that would employ 250 people. People in the RM of Hanover near Steinbach are cleaning up a mess left by this week's heavy rain. Some had water almost 18 centimeters or 7 inches deep in their basements. Many had no time to prepare. Wayne Pratt lives just outside Kleefeld. He has more than a meter of water in his crawl space, and for now his house is an island.
I can't do much. It's draining. You see that the white foam over there, it's moving to the north, so it's draining but slow. And I'm worried about all the wetness on my house because that can cause black mold, right? So I'm thinking, that's the first time this has happened now, so.
Pratt says some of his neighbors were forced to leave because of the flooding. The RM says almost 50 roads have been washed out. 156 millimeters of rain fell in that area over 36 hours earlier this week. The mood in Lebanon today is tense, people on edge. In Beirut, this man says he's afraid of his mobile phone. Over the past 2 days, Hezbollah pagers and walkie-talkies have detonated. At least 32 people were killed, thousands more injured. The region is watching to see how the militant group Hezbollah will respond. Senior leader Hassan Nasrallah is expected to speak in a few hours. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. And a new report shows Canada was able last year to make modest cuts to its planet-warming emissions. New estimates show Canada cut emissions by about 1% last year compared to 2022. It suggests hikes in oil and gas production and rebounding air travel put a drag on Canada's climate progress. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi is watching our forecast as always. And you know what? Now I'm looking at the YouTube shot and it looks like fog, not like yesterday, but it's kind of misty out there. Same sort of start to the day. I thought it would be sunnier.
Yeah, it's still going to get sunny. We're still going to see plenty of sunshine. This is just a prelude to what we're going to get later in the day, but some sunshine will come. Then this set of clouds we're seeing will roll back in as we get late into the morning, bringing a good chance of showers into the afternoon period. We still do have that risk of thunderstorms to come with that, and we won't be warming up as our current temperature is just at 21 and we'll only get to 22 later today. Other regions, they're just seeing temperatures ranging all the way to 23 in Morris. Also similar conditions, a mix of sun and clouds. Brandon 14, Dauphin 16, Gimli 20, Steinberg 21, Morris 19, and Thompson and Churchill between 17 and 14. Right now, Winnipeg 21, we're heading to a high of 22, and it's going to be breezy at some point today, and then that would bring that chance of showers later in the day.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk is here to look at the morning commute.
Yeah, it's really been a quiet commute overall out there. Haven't heard much on the commuter line at all. But a reminder that if you're driving down 18th Street in Brandon today, there's that paving going on. So that might disrupt your commute a little bit. But if you see something else going on, give me a call in the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. And wherever you're listening or watching, thank you for joining us today. Next on the program, it is time for today's monthly interview with Mayor Scott Gillingham, who is in studio with us live this morning. Hi there.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Nice to see you. We've had a bit of a summer break, so we'll be back at our monthly conversations.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It's been a great summer, but there's so much work to do. And so we are at City Hall. We're back full throttle with all the different files that we're working on.
Housing, always top of mind. You're in the news talking about housing this morning, some of the starts that you guys have been able to achieve by the numbers. I want to play you a clip, actually. Why don't we start with housing? This was on the show yesterday. So we've been talking about homeless encampments on CBC the last week, all over the city, but also possible next steps before those, housing units can be built to house people outside of encampments, should that be their choice. But on CBC yesterday, we heard Kim Ritchie. Kim Ritchie weighed in on what the city of Hamilton's working on. So Ritchie's on the board of directors for the Substance Overdose Education Prevention Network, for those of you that missed the interview. She's also experienced being houseless herself. So Hamilton has some new encampment protocols. Ritchie says in her city, which sounds actually a lot like our city, they need sanctioned encampments is what she would like to see until proper housing can be built. Here's just a bit of what she said.
The protocols are in place, but enforcement has been challenging because it's a lot of money to go around, and still because folks are being moved. If they're a violation of the protocols, they get moved, and then outreach workers can't find them. And this is a huge challenge. You can't house somebody you can't find. And the amount of human resources that's wasted just trying to keep up with where people are being moved to is insane. When you have sanctioned sites, you can have designated restrooms, you can have, garbage pickup weekly, and then people can find people. I can't emphasize the importance of being able to find somebody when you're completing a housing application, when you're going apartment hunting, when you're helping them get their ID back and you need them to sign some more forms. You know what I mean? I cannot tell you how important that is.
So Mayor Scott Gillingham, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the idea of sanctioned encampments here in Winnipeg, because she raises a lot of, logical points there.
Well, first of all, I think, just playing that clip is just indicative of the fact that across Canada, certainly across North America, but for sure, Marcy, across Canada, every major city is facing the challenge of homelessness, where there's too many people who are living unsheltered and homeless. And so I think, that's a reminder that every one of the mayors, councils, service providers in our communities across Canada are facing similar challenges. We want to end homelessness, not just manage it. And so I would rather us be putting our efforts into getting more housing built and getting people into housing with wraparound supports. We're focused on that rather than be looking at moving to sanctioned encampments. I'm not in favor of that at this point. I've been to other cities where there have been sanctioned encampments, and individuals, rightly and fairly so, have a freedom of movement and don't stay in those encampments, even though there's a sanctioned area. And so I respect, and this individual who the clip of which you played has lived experience, so I'm not going to certainly argue with their lived experience. I respect that. But it's a complex matter. Everybody knows it's a complex matter. Our focus is housing first, get the housing built with the wraparound supports. And so at this point, our focus is getting people out of encampments and into housing. I don't think we as a community are serving the vulnerable population by allowing them to live in an encampment for an indefinite period of time, and that always be their permanent home. That's not their permanent home. It shouldn't be.
And she did raise that was a concern with the sanctioned encampments as well, actually, that they would be viewed as a permanent place. And she said, ultimately the goal is more affordable housing. In the meantime, though, could garbage pickup happen now, for example? Some of the services and things that would provide dignity, or portable washrooms, which is actually, a human right. Emily Brass did a whole report for us on CBC last week talking about, actually the right to what a houseless person's right would be to, right to a washroom. Could we look in Winnipeg at having more of those services around the encampments that do exist?
Well, for sure, you raised garbage pickup. That has been a topic of conversation for quite a while at City Hall. And we've taken some action on that. In fact, the City of Winnipeg has been partnering with some of the frontline agencies who are providing some of that regular garbage pickup, and doing so in a manner that is in collaboration with the people living in the encampments. Let's also remember that where there are encampments, in proximity, there are people who are living in apartment buildings and homes, and we get consistent calls as councillors and mayor, and I understand that. I appreciate that from residents. I've met with residents who live in apartments, for example.
We had some folks on from Osborne Village last week. Yep.
Yes. I've met with some of those folks who have great concern about the encampments and they're living next to areas where sometimes there's not regular trash pickup, or there's a lot of garbage, and there's abandoned shopping carts and the like. And so it is it's a very complex issue. We are tackling it head on. I have a meeting coming up, in fact, tomorrow with Minister Smith, Bernadette Smith, the Provincial Minister of Housing, Homelessness and Addiction. And I believe we are making good progress together as a city and a province with the service agencies. I believe we're going to continue to do that. We need one coordinated plan that everybody's working off of, with a priority on housing first with wraparound supports. And I think we should continue to focus all efforts on getting to that.
Just before we leave this topic of encampments and move to another topic area for a monthly interview, Mayor Gillingham, I want to ask you about protocols specifically for encampments. In the meantime, I respect that the ultimate goal is affordable housing, but in the meantime, we have people living in the encampments for various reasons. What protocols are in place already or could be strengthened? We heard from Hamilton yesterday that because of fire hazard, that one of the protocols was no, overhang of a tarp attached to a structure. We also heard that in Hamilton, some people like this, some people didn't, but what they have there is a limit on 5 tents per encampment. Some people said they lost community and didn't have enough strength in numbers. Other people said that was more manageable in terms of feeling safe because it was a smaller community. What are your thoughts on specific protocols for encampments in Winnipeg?
We do have a set of, I would say, an agreed upon set of, we call it protocols, or we call it a process map for encampments. First of all, and I commend again the frontline agencies who have relationship with individuals living in encampments and are trying to make sure that their needs are being met and they're getting them out of encampments into housing where possible. Where there's a requirement for emergency services to come in to make, as you indicate, to make sure that there's not fire safety issues, or where paramedics are needed, or where there may be criminal activity, emergency service personnel need to be able to go in there. That's part of our process that we agree upon already. We, be the City of Winnipeg and all the frontline agencies, that's been well established. Too often, Marcy, the most vulnerable people in our community are the ones who are often the most victimized by crime and whose lives can be at risk. And sometimes, many times, those individuals are people living in encampments. So we have to make sure that our emergency service personnel can go in and do their work to help and assist the people that need that assistance. And they need to be able to go into encampments and do that work.
We'll see what happens with your meeting with the province tomorrow. 7:46 a.m. the time right now. This is our regular monthly interview with Scott Gillingham, the Mayor of Winnipeg. You're on the police board. Let's switch gears here. The next chief is going to be chosen. Just this week, the Southern Chiefs Organization, Grand Chief Jerry Daniels, with a call to action saying, quote, "We are no longer surprised when police harass, belittle, and abuse our First Nation citizens, acting with complete disregard because it happens so often. It's gone on for 150 years, end quote. He is making a call for the police service. He says to the next chief rather be a person that will have a willingness to address urgently needed, as he put it, culture change within the force. We also have a CBC Manitoba, a pro poll of Winnipeggers saying, they want the chief to prioritize downtown safety, reduce petty crime. And then after 8 today, we're going to hear from an I-Team report about a Winnipeg officer, it's in the news this morning, with a history of misconduct allegations who's facing more scrutiny because 3 Ethiopian men, Winnipeggers, say he targeted their community, 3 Ethiopian men. As you're weighing all of this, what is the top priority for you in the next police chief? And what are you looking for in that person?
Well, I'll speak as mayor. Yes, I sit on the police board. Councillor Marcus Chambers, chair of the board, speaks on behalf of the board. So I'll speak as mayor, and I've said this before. The Winnipeg has a great opportunity right now in selecting the next chief of police. That individual has a significant amount of impact in our community. I, as mayor, I'm looking for someone who is a strong leader, but who's a listener, who will engage with community, all sectors of community, who will be a collaborator, who understands that the police service is a very important but one of several agencies in the community who need to collaborate to provide public safety. We need, for sure, someone who is dedicated to the path and the journey of reconciliation with Indigenous community members and newcomer community members as well. And so it's a very tall order to be the chief of police in any city, and certainly a city of our size with our complexity. But collaboration, communication, attentiveness are the 3, and a strong leader are really 3 or 4 key areas that I'll be watching for and qualities that I'm looking for in the next leader.
Will we miss the boat if we don't also seek a person who can lead and consider dealing with systemic changes to the structure of the service in our city, do you think, given the moment we're sitting in here?
I believe that's a fair comment. I think police services, but other services, I'll just say city structures in general, always need to be evolving, always need to be identifying, where things need to be improved, need to be changed, and recognize that, it's a new day. We're evolving, we're growing as a community. Times change, and so we need to be looking at our systems and structures always to make sure that they are changed, modified to meet the needs of the day.
So with your mayor hat on, how concerned are you when you hear like SEO chief saying we no longer are surprised when we're harassed or belittled, or these 3 Ethiopian men who we're going to hear from after 8 that say, we've been targeted?
Yeah, so I believe that Grand Chief Jerry Daniels and I have a good relationship that we've built over years. In his letter I was CC'd as mayor on it. The letter was to the police board chair, Councillor Marcus Chambers. He did call for a meeting. We've set that meeting up. We're going to be having a meeting with Grand Chief Daniels to hear from him more. I'm always open to and want to be open to the concerns that individuals or organizations or governments raise about City Winnipeg, whether it's police or any other department or any individual. I'm open to those discussions. We always want to be moving, making progress on the path of reconciliation.
Time right now is 11 minutes to 8 o'clock. Mayor Scott Gillingham is here for our regular monthly interview where we cover, as you can hear, a number of different topics. And the next one actually is something you have coming up this fall. You have the Mayor's Ball for the Arts. So I was actually going to ask you what types of things you like to do in the fall in Winnipeg, but this is obviously something that is new. Can you tell us a little bit about why you're having a gathering like this for the arts?
It's part of our Winnipeg 150 celebrations. This year, Winnipeg is celebrating our 150th birthday anniversary as a city. And one of the events that we're really looking forward to is on October 5th at the RBC Convention Center. I'll be hosting the Mayor's Ball. And when the idea was first brought to me, we got talking about it with a few people. One of the things that I said is, okay, we'll do the Mayor's Ball, but let's do it as a fundraiser to go to the performing arts. So the 4 performing arts groups, the ballet, the symphony, the opera, and the theater. Are all going to be there that night, and so anyone who's interested in wants to attend, we'd love to have everybody attend. It's a night where you're going to see all 4 of those performing arts groups perform in one manner or another. there's a tax receipt that people can get for a portion of their ticket. And as I said, the funds go to support our great performing arts groups.
And that's coming up on October the 5th is the date for that.
Yes, October 5th.
And just finally this morning, I do want to also ask you about downtown and the redevelopment plan of Portage Place, which has been announced in some detail now. So you have called True North's planned redevelopment, quote, one of the biggest downtown developments in generations. The city will offer $40 million in grants and tax relief to help make it happen. Why is it critical in your view and worth supporting with taxpayer dollars?
Well, the first point I would say is that $40 million of incentives the city of Winnipeg is putting on the table will leverage and unlock over $600 million of investment from other funders. Portage Place has been an underperforming big piece of property in the heart of our downtown. We need that piece of property to do very well. And so I'm really excited about True North's investment, or what they're looking to develop. They've established many important partnerships as well, Marcy, including a partnership with Southern Chiefs Organization for housing development. And other partnerships that they're looking for. They've done a lot of consultation with the community to make sure the community space is part of that project as well. And when you take a look at this project and you look at what the Manitoba Métis Federation has been doing, for example, with their investment at Portage and Main, at the old Bank of Montreal building in 200 Main Street, Walwanesa Insurance and their brand new building, and other developments in the downtown, this is really, really exciting. But this development, redevelopment of Portage Place, I believe will unlock a lot of other investment in the downtown.
What aspect of the project will improve downtown the most and also affect, the average Winnipegger when you think about what the average person will get out of the investment? What aspects of the project do you think will change downtown the most?
Well, first of all, when you're looking at a $600+ million investment in downtown, that sends a big signal to all Winnipeggers and other potential investors about the importance and the belief in the downtown's future. Let's not underestimate that. But more housing will be built there. Over 200 units of housing. They're looking also at a major healthcare going into one of the towers, a grocery store. The beautifying and redesigning. That part of Portage Avenue. And so aesthetically, it'll be much more pleasing to Winnipeg's downtown as well. And the partnership, I think we can't underestimate, the partnership between True North and Southern Chiefs Organization. We talked a moment ago about the journey of reconciliation that we are on as a city, as a province. And so when you have economic reconciliation and opportunity for First Nations, Indigenous peoples to fully participate in the economy, and the redevelopment of our downtown, I think that's an important message in our 150th year as a city. That's an important message about the direction we're going as a city in the future.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
That is the mayor of the city of Winnipeg, Scott Gillingham, with our regular monthly interview. And it is right now 6 minutes to 8 o'clock on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and you're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube.
Coca-Cola Uncapped Campus Love with a friendly twist. Crack open a Grolsch, win a movie. But in the Philippines, a $32 billion boo-boo left Pepsi flat. Number Fever, surprising stories of bottle cap marketing on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Tomorrow morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on demand on CBC Listen.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now, we are just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
The situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
It is 5 to 8 now on Thursday morning here. Let's have a look at what's going on in your morning commute in advance of headlines. Corey Funk, obviously, on the team. I shouldn't say obviously, but if you listen to the show, you know it's Corey that's here with your commute news.
Yeah, just got a call from Tim on the commuter line, northbound St. Mary's, just before Fermor. He says there's an illegally parked vehicle in the curb lane causing what he calls chaos. So big backups there. So heads up, the advice there, keep left. So look out for that. That's really the only major issue I've heard on the commute out so far. But if you see something, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing. The number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks very much, Corey.
Thank you.
I want to invite you to make your pitch to us for what we might ask on our call-in conversations on Radio Noon. I did this actually last week. I was filling in for Janet Stewart hosting Noon, and they have the call-in conversation between 12:30 and 1 every day. And on Facebook, I actually posted this question, got a lot of really great and thoughtful ideas for discussions that you want to hear. So just want to take a moment here, if you're listening, to invite you to call us and let us know what topics you would like to hear discussed in a call-in conversation. This is a local conversation with Manitobans. It's live over the noon hour between 12:30 and 1 every day. So what topics do you want to hear discussed? They always have a supporting guest to help you through the conversations on the air on Radio Noon. So you can call Radio Noon's listener line and leave a message if you've got an idea for a topic you'd like to hear people weigh in on. And that number is 788-3797. So Radio Noon's listener line, 788-3797. Right now it is exactly 3 minutes to 8 o'clock, and Heather Wells is back in with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, a Winnipeg police officer with a history of allegations of misconduct is now being accused of wrongful arrest. 2 Ethiopian men say Winnipeg Police Patrol Sergeant Jeffrey Norman unlawfully arrested them over what they say should just have been a parking ticket, and now they're demanding the service do something about it. You can hear more on this story right after World Report coming up with the I-Team's Kristen Annabelle. So stay tuned for that. As well, people in the Arm of Hanover near Steinbach are cleaning up a mess left by this week's heavy rain. Some people had almost 18 centimeters of water in their basement. The municipalities received hundreds of calls, about 50 roads in the area washed out. Some local leaders hoping the province's disaster assistance program will help people with the cleanup. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, I always mention that on our Facebook page during the show, my page acts as a show page. So please go on Marcy Marcusa this morning on Facebook and weigh in on anything you hear in the show. Last hour, I was remarking how early this morning, the beautiful sight of some deer in the city of Winnipeg. They weren't quite where they should be. They were on someone's lawn eating out of a bird feeder. But now, if you do go to my Facebook page, you're going to find some videos shared by listeners. Linda Pern shared a video. It looks like a family of raccoons coming to the watering hole, as she puts it, a couple of nights ago on her property. So there they all are bounding in. She's got a camera set up there. So if you've got anything you want to share with us, please do. Anytime online. Let's have a dip into the weather here. It is mostly cloudy, 21 degrees in downtown Winnipeg, and winds are southeast at 4. We're not going to move much today. 22 is the daytime high. And we could see some sun early, but then increasing cloud late this morning, a 60% chance of showers. And into this afternoon, a risk of a thunderstorm as well. Winds will be gusty, also winds south 30 to 50. So we'll see what happens after yesterday's strange day. Seemed like showers had passed. All of a sudden it got dark, it poured, and then back and forth. 1 minute to 8 now. World Report's coming up next, right here on CBC. Stay with us.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Acclaimed music video director Joseph Kahn has a new creature feature called Ick. He'll tell you about the film and how making high-pressure music videos for the likes of Taylor Swift and Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys helped him become a better feature filmmaker.
Making videos is really not a secure job by any way.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Offer treatment for her debilitating disease and won't cover the cost for her to get help elsewhere. One woman's fight to live free of pain coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. The mood in Lebanon is tense. People are on edge. In Beirut, this man says he's afraid of his mobile phone. Over the past 2 days, Hezbollah pagers and walkie-talkies have detonated. At least 37 people were killed. Thousands more have been injured, and the region is watching to see how the militant group Hezbollah will respond. Senior leader Hassan Nasrallah is expected to speak next hour. Let's go to the CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. And Sasha, what is the latest on these attacks?
Well, yesterday's second round hit people in Lebanon very, very hard, not just because of the increased numbers of people who've been hit, but also psychologically. People are afraid of anything that is technological and just waiting for whatever it is that Israel, from their perspective, might do next. This is, for instance, what an internal medicine specialist had to say after treating people. Her name is Dania El Halak.
They had puncture wounds on their faces, they had amputated limbs, they had open abdomens, intestines out, bowels out. It was the first time I ever see wounds like that.
Now, the New York Times is reporting today the devices that exploded were provided to Hezbollah by Israel itself. That Israeli intelligence, hiding behind a number of shell companies, had caught on to the fact that the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, was putting out orders that the organization should move to lower tech devices because he was afraid that cell phones were too easy to track. So he ordered these pagers to be bought. And when they actually came from Israel and they were all set to explode. That is what the investigation by the New York Times has come up with.
We're hearing a lot of concern this will ignite a full-blown war between Israel and Hezbollah. Is there any sign that could happen?
There are indications both sides are preparing for this. In Israel itself today, there was an attack from the Lebanese side using guided anti-tank missiles. 8 were injured on the Israeli side. And Israel itself launched airstrikes and 1 drone strike this morning against a weapons depot. So that has been going on. But we are seeing signs that it's going to escalate. For instance, the powerful 98th Division of the Israeli army, they have been moved up to the northern border. Now, it's not 100% clear whether this is being done to attack or whether it's being done in anticipation of whatever it is that Hezbollah might do on the other side as a defensive measure.
Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusek reporting from Jerusalem. In a few hours, the Liberal cabinet will lose another minister. Pablo Rodriguez will formally announce his intention to run for leader of the Liberal Party in Quebec and quit his job as transport minister. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau with more. And Janice, how is this playing out in Ottawa?
Marcia, this has been rumored for weeks, but as Pablo Rodriguez makes it official this morning, the loss of Justin Trudeau's Quebec lieutenant leaves a gaping hole in this government, not only losing his experience as a combative minister, but as one of the Liberals' national campaign chairs, Soraya Martinez Ferrada, put it yesterday, Rodriguez is a political machine. Here's Defence Minister Bill Blair.
I know he's a great Canadian, but I also know he's a great Quebecer. I know he feels very strongly about assuming responsibility and leadership in Quebec.
He's leaping here from Ottawa's political frying pan into the fire of federalist politics in Quebec. The provincial Liberal Party has been without a permanent leader for nearly 2 years now. After being decimated in the last election, the race to finally pick a new chief gets underway this winter. The stakes are high. Rebuilding the Liberal brand in this era of populist politics, suiting up to make the case for federalism in a 21st century referendum fight. Oof. Here's Quebec Liberal MNA Desiree McGrath.
This is an act of courage. This would be, in my mind, an act of personal and political courage. And no matter how much hope and confidence I have in the future of the Quebec Liberal Party, we're a ship that already sank. We are a ship that has already sunk, and we are now rebuilding.
And speaking of political courage, Justin Trudeau needs a new transport minister.
Yup. And as this news becomes official, we'll watch to see if the cabinet shuffle it triggers will be a small one, a simple swap, or whether this is a moment for Trudeau to survey other ministers eyeing the exit, make sure everyone around the table is all in for a big fight ahead. Rodriguez, perhaps for safety, isn't resigning as MP just yet, so at least the Liberals don't immediately have to face a by-election for another vacant seat in Montreal.
All right, thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. In northern Bolivia, wildfires are destroying farmland. A farmer walks through his fields. Small patches of fire are still burning. He says His workers were left exhausted. They also inhaled a lot of smoke while trying to contain the flames. Many of his cattle are dead. Bolivia is on track for a record year of fires. Drought is mainly to blame. Other parts of South America are also experiencing a record-breaking year for wildfires. A bit of good news emerging from a new report. Canada's carbon emissions in 2023 were down. The Canadian Climate Institute says the decrease was slight. Emissions are lower by nearly 1%. But as Anand Ram reports, some sectors are doing a better job than others at making improvements.
The availability of heat pumps is starting to really be a game changer.
In a new measure of Canada's carbon emissions, buildings are a bright spot, and new technology is helping. Dave Sawyer is the principal economist at the Canadian Climate Institute.
So it really is this sort of movement to heat pumps that are starting to drive the emission reductions. And then people are naturally upgrading their houses, and the new buildings are way more efficient.
Advances in renewable tech are also helping the electricity sector bring down its impact. But one industry continued its rise, pumping out nearly a third of Canada's total emissions.
We have this sort of yin and yang effect where we're trying to, keep emissions down, but oil and gas keeps pulling us up, basically.
The problem, experts say, is the amount of oil and gas being produced cancels any gains the industry makes in improved efficiency. Janetta McKenzie is with the Pembina Institute.
A lot of those emissions intensity improvements have been sort of offset by increases in production. So this continues to be a tricky thing to solve.
But McKenzie is hopeful, saying this data shows growth and going green can coexist, but not through technology alone.
Good effective climate policy, when it leverages opportunities available through new innovation and through new clean technology, really starts to work on both an emissions reduction kind of side of things, but also on the economic policy side of things.
But without continued pushes in both policies and moving to renewables, this latest estimate says Canada will not meet its 2030 emissions targets. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
It was stolen from the walls of Ottawa's Chateau Laurier, the famous portrait of Winston Churchill, dubbed the Roaring Lion. Now, the photograph has officially been returned to Canadian officials. The handover took place in Rome this morning. The CBC's Megan Williams has more on the portrait and how it ended up in Italy.
A Canadian-Italian homecoming.
The return of a treasured Canadian portrait.
The famed use of Karsh portrait of Sir Winston Churchill, unveiled today in a ceremony at the Canadian Embassy in Rome. Karsh shot the black and white portrait of the late British Prime Minister in 1941, after Churchill had delivered a rousing wartime speech to Canadian MPs. Posing for the portrait, Churchill wanted to keep puffing on his cigar, but Karsh snatched it from his mouth, prompting Churchill to scowl, the expression that led to the portrait's moniker, the Roaring Lion.
An iconic image, a testament to both Karsh and Churchill, as well as to the spirit of Britain standing against fascists in World War II.
Said Deputy Minister of Canadian Heritage Isabelle Mondoux. The portrait hung in the lobby of the Fairmont Chateau Laurier Hotel for years, until it was discovered in 2022 that it had been replaced by a cheap fake. With the help of visitors who sent photos of the portrait, police narrowed the window it was stolen in down to 10 days after Christmas 2021. Last month, they announced they'd found the photo, bought 4 months after it was stolen by Italian Nicola Cassinelli in an online auction with Sotheby's.
Of course, at that time, I thought I was just buying one of the several copies of the Roaring Lion.
Cassinelli said until police contacted him, he'd enjoyed the portrait in his living room. An Ontario man faces multiple charges, including theft, forgery, and trafficking in stolen property for the theft. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
And there is more on this story on our main page at cbcnews.ca. That is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime. cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live downtown on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Thanks for joining us on CBC. Temperature hasn't moved from early this morning. Abby's in with the forecast in a moment. It's a strange time of year. You look out the window, it's cloudy. You're feeling like those fall temperatures and the coolness will be in the air, but it's actually still pretty sticky and warm. So we'll hear more about the forecast and what's coming in a moment. This half hour in the program, we have a serious story to tell you about. 3 Ethiopian men are accusing a Winnipeg police officer of having targeted their community by showing up to a local restaurant and ticketing illegally parked cars. How the last interaction escalated and landed 2 of the men in jail. The I-Team's Kristen Annabelle will be here to talk all about the story, and she'll be in studio this half hour with us with a special report. Also, with updates on other reports and news, here's Heather Wells with headlines.
Good morning. Well, the city of Winnipeg is close to reaching a goal the mayor set to speed up housing development. In his State of the City speech back in February, Scott Gillingham said he wanted the city to approve 8,000 housing units by December. A report to Executive Policy Committee this week says the city has approved more than 7,600 units. Still, the mayor says there is more work to do. The city of Selkirk is welcoming federal and provincial help towards the construction of a solar glass processing facility. Alberta's Canadian Premium Sands announced yesterday Ottawa and the province have signed letters of intent to cover almost a third of that project's nearly $900 million cost. Selkirk CAO Dwayne Nichols says the plant would become the second largest employer in Selkirk after the steel mill. You can hear more on those stories and other Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Now it's time to get into this pesky forecast, Abby.
Yep, warm Thursday morning in the city, 21 in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy. Yes, the temperature has not moved much for most of the region. The only change we've seen is daylight, and of course, the only part of the province that has really seen much change is Dauphin right now, seeing some sunny conditions. Winnipeg is expecting sunshine to start later in the day, but then the clouds will move in by late morning, bringing a good chance of showers. There's also a risk of thunderstorms in the forecast. We won't be warming up much beyond our current temperature. We're just going to get to 22, so that's what we should be expecting today. Then that showers would come with a risk of thunderstorm, which will continue into the evening. Same condition for most of the regions. We're going to see clouds and sunshine and then chance of showers. Thompson at 17, Churchill at 14. Cloudy conditions prevail in Brandon at 13, 14 in Dauphin, 20 in Gimli, 21 in Steinbach, and 19 in Morris. In Winnipeg, 21, and we're just going to get to 22.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, any news on the traffic line?
Been a pretty quiet morning overall, but I did get a call from Tim on the commuter line. Northbound St. Mary's, just before Fermor, there's an illegally parked car in the curb lane. He says that's caused some pretty big backups for folks. That was about 15 minutes or so ago, so hopefully it is cleared. But if it's not, heads up there. If you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
So let's get into this special report now. As I mentioned, a Winnipeg police officer who is facing multiple lawsuits for having questionable encounters with members of the public is again under scrutiny. 3 Ethiopian men from our community are accusing the officer of targeting their community after being fixated on doling out parking tickets. Now, the I-Team's Kristen Annabelle joins us to talk about this, and she's live in studio with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
So who is the officer? Let's start there, and then why do the people we mentioned, these 3 men, think that he was targeting them?
So the officer is Jeffrey Norman, and he's been with the Winnipeg Police Service for over 2 decades, and he holds the rank of patrol sergeant. Now, he's never been criminally charged or found guilty of anything. However, he has been sued at least 10 times, and these allegations range from searching without a warrant, assault, and wrongful arrests. We spoke with 3 men who've had run-ins with Norman in the area of Graham Avenue and Edmonton Street, downtown, outside of an Ethiopian restaurant called Kokeb. Befekadu Abatau says he saw Norman numerous times outside the restaurant, waiting to ticket people who parked illegally in the back lane. Now, on February 17th, he saw Norman waiting for a driver to return to his car, so he grabbed his cell phone and he started recording. And in that video, you can see Norman asking the driver, Ayea Abaya, for his driver's license. But when he doesn't hand it over, he's arrested for obstructing a police officer. A friend of Abaya, Tamarat Sisa, was standing nearby and was mouthing off to Norman, and then he was arrested. Norman took Abatau's cell phone for evidence, which is now the subject of an ongoing Lyra investigation. That's a law enforcement review agency. That's the body that investigates public complaints against police. Here's Abatau.
He just feels like he's very powerful in that uniform. He forgot that the responsibility that he carries with that uniform. I'm sure there are very good police officers who are doing their job to protect and make this community safe. But he has to stop.
Now, Apatow says one time Norman ticketed a food delivery driver even though someone had stolen the driver's keys when he ran inside the restaurant to grab a pickup order.
What happened to the two men that Norman arrested?
So Abaya and Cisse, they were taken to Winnipeg Police Headquarters where they were fingerprinted, had mugshots taken, and were detained for several hours. They were eventually released on a promise to appear in court on charges for obstructing a peace officer. Abaya says he was driving for Uber that day and had only parked in the back lane to run and use the washroom at a nearby convenience store.
I was just working, trying to make a living, but I had a sudden urgent to use the bathroom. This is all I have done. That's all I did. They put me against the police cruiser. They searched me. They handcuffed me. They put me in the back of the police car. And I was confused. I did not know. That was the first time I met this person. I've never seen him. Never heard of him before.
Since that instance, Abaya Googled Norman and learned he's not the first person to have an unhappy run-in with him.
What about Cisse?
So Cisse still has no idea why he was arrested in the first place. But unlike Abaya, he has had previous run-ins with Norman. He's a mechanic, and he says 10 days before that incident, he was test driving a car for a customer when it overheated. He stopped in the back lane beside Kokeb Restaurant to add antifreeze when Norman gave him a ticket for parking illegally.
There is 1,000 police officers. They are so amazing. They are doing their job. Because of this guy, they are going to get a bad name for them. So really disappointed.
Now, in April, Cisse and Abaya's lawyer told them the charges had been dropped. It turns out the charges were never authorized by the Crown.
What are police saying?
So Winnipeg police say that on that day Norman encountered the men, he had been stopped by a garbage truck operator who said they couldn't access the bin in the back lane because the car parked in front of it. They couldn't say anything more because of the ongoing lyric complaint about Apatow's cell phone.
What are legal experts saying about all of this?
So we spoke with Brandon Trask. He's an assistant professor at the Faculty of Law at the University of Manitoba, and he used to be a Crown attorney in Nova Scotia. He believes Winnipeg police need to do more to address concerns about Norman.
So this, in isolation, probably realistically wouldn't lead to anything, but this in tandem with all of the other allegations and all of the other legal actions involving Jeffrey Norman, I think at some point somebody at the Winnipeg Police Service has to stop and ask, is this who we want representing us as an agency, right? Is this somebody we want as a public face of our allegedly community building policing agency?
Now, the president of the Winnipeg Police Association, that's the union that represents Winnipeg police, says that there are a number of levels of police oversight that is, and I quote, vastly higher in our view than that of any other public servant, end quote. He said if anyone feels they have grounds to make a complaint against police, they can contact Lyra.
All right, Kristen, thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
And you can, as always with the I-Team, there's always more to learn and know. So please go online and read the story at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Kristen Annabelle's been with us this morning in studio, reporter with CBC Manitoba's I-Team. And we will also have more on the story tonight if you're watching CBC News at 6 on CBC. And remember, if you have a tip for the I-Team, and often when we have I-Team stories on, people do want to call and reach out. So please do that. You can call the confidential tip line, which is 204-788-3744.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
8:20 is the time right now on 89.3. Thanks so much for joining us this morning here on CBC. Well, we've got a tune next, and it's from someone that you might go, really? Or maybe you know that Billy Bob Thornton sings and performs in a band. The band's called the Boxmasters. Billy Bob Thornton, of course, known as an Academy Award-winning actor, but he is also a musician. So they're going to be playing, he and his band, the Boxmasters, Club Regent tomorrow here in Winnipeg. Maybe you're going. If you're not, here's what he sounds like. This is Work of Art.
heavy feeling creeps through my bones as I get out of the car and close the door. I think back to your voice on the phone. My blood starts to cause my ears to roar. The back door screen is slightly ajar. Then I walk into the kitchen for a beer. I look up in the doorway, there you are. And your face tells me there's been someone else here. The way you smell, the way you sway, the way your eyes just drift away, the way the pain strangles my heart. I have no doubt this was the work of art. How can you disrespect me so? You barely even hide your secret sin. It seems you wouldn't want me to know. Or maybe you just think that I'm that dim. I see the pack of luckies he forgot. When he's around, you have a different smile. You may think I'm love blind, but I'm not. Don't think that I don't know my best friend's style. The way he plays, the game he plays, the way he takes your breath away, the way he painted us apart. I have no doubt this was the work of art.
That's the name of this tune, Work of Art. You likely recognize the voice of Billy Bob Thornton, and the Boxmaster's the name of his band. He's going to be in Winnipeg tomorrow night at Club Regent Events Center. 8:24 a.m. the time right now on CBC. In Winnipeg, mostly cloudy and 21 degrees. Well, next on the show, I know that we're getting into the fall season, but we keep remarking on still how mild it is out there. And of course, we came out of a year where we had record heat and record temperatures across much of Manitoba. We actually have an interview this morning about air conditioners, because more of us are getting air conditioners because of climate change, but air conditioners are about to get more expensive to fight climate change. CBC's Jennifer Keane explains.
Star Vickery has lived in Halifax for decades, and for most of that time, summers have been very maritime-y.
The fog would come in, and we have a biannual race here called the Marblehead to Halifax. That's from Boston to Halifax. Inevitably, fog and cold.
But not anymore.
In the last 10 years, our summers are getting warmer, and the last two have been unbearable.
Between the heat and the humidity this summer, Star cracked.
We persevered through June and most of July, and my husband and I looked at each other and he said, I'm going to Canadian Tire to buy an air conditioner. And we didn't toy with the idea because we can't live like this anymore.
They shelled out more than $800 for a window box unit they call Big Bertha. According to the most recent StatsCan data, roughly 64% of Canadians have air conditioning. If you're one of them, congratulations, because next year, getting AC will be more expensive.
Yeah, a significant price increase coming for sure.
Jeff Johnson is an HVAC expert with Arpes Industries in Calgary.
The homeowner's price today is looking like it'll probably go up 15 to 20%.
20%? That means an $800 air conditioner could cost nearly $1,000 next year. And it all comes down to refrigerant. The stuff currently used in air conditioners doesn't meet new regulations under the Montreal Protocol, which limits the amount of harmful chemicals going into the atmosphere. So, as of January, it's out.
So the refrigerant change has all the manufacturers have to redevelop their whole model, new safety protocols, new training procedures. Their whole facilities have to change. So there's a significant cost to that. The refrigerant cost alone is different as well.
They are not as bad for the ozone layer. They are not as intensive in terms of greenhouse gas emissions.
Warren Mabey is the director of the Queen's Institute for Energy and Environmental Policy. He says the new refrigerant will be better for the environment, especially when
we're getting to the point where everybody does need to have access to these air conditioners.
But the added costs come at a tough time for Canadians.
There are times when it's easier to take on additional costs if the economy is doing well, if inflation is under control. People have a bit more disposable income, and it's easier to say, yes, I will pay a little bit more for this. When times are tight, and I think it's fair to say that times are tight right now, it can be really hard for Canadians to find those extra thousands of dollars that are required to do things.
So we need air conditioners because of climate change, but the stuff we need to do to fight climate change will make air conditioners more expensive. Oh, the hot, sweaty irony of it all. Star Vickery is glad she bought her AC unit before prices started climbing.
Boy, it gives you a nice break.
For CBC Radio, I'm Jennifer Keane.
Jennifer Keane works with the show The Cost of Living on CBC, and they cover money and economic forces that are all around us. You can subscribe to their podcast or listen to the show right here on Sundays at noon on CBC Radio 1. And of course, that story might have you thinking about Manitoba and, of course, the rebates that were put in place by the current government around heat pumps. And I'm curious whether or not you got one and how it worked for you this summer. So if you're one of those folks that has one, I'd love to hear your experience with it. 788-3205. Corey Funk has popped back into the studio to talk traffic.
Yeah, just got a call from Allison who said on eastbound Centerport at Brookside, there's a multi-vehicle collision blocking the right lane, the turning lane and the right lane there. You can actually, you can't turn right onto Brookside, so heads up there. There are emergency vehicles on scene as well. Mike called northbound St. Mary's just before Fermar. There is still an illegally parked car in the curb lane causing big backups, he says, all the way to about St. Vital Road. So heads up there. Very, very slow going on northbound St. Mary's this morning, just before Fermor. If you see anything else, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Coming up next, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is warm as we get your Thursday underway. 21 degrees right now in Winnipeg. We're going to see still a chance of showers today and a windy high of 22. 3 Ethiopian men are accusing Winnipeg Police Patrol Sergeant Jeffrey Norman of previously targeting their community by showing up often near a local restaurant and handing out parking tickets. The last encounter landed 2 of the men in jail, although no charges ended up being laid. Befeqadu Apatow recorded the incident. He has since filed a complaint with LIRA, the Law Enforcement Review Agency, a police oversight body.
Something has to be done. He just can't keep doing this.
Norman has been sued 10 times dating back to 2005. The allegations range from assault and wrongful arrest to unnecessary use of a taser. You can read more on this CBC iTeam story on our website this morning, cbc.ca/Manitoba. The City of Winnipeg is close to reaching a goal the mayor set to speed up housing development. In his State of the City speech back in February, Scott Gillingham said he wanted the city to approve 8,000 housing units by December. A report to the Executive Policy Committee this week says the city has approved more than 7,600 units. Gillingham says their work is paying off.
All the departments, they're stepping up. They're working very hard to get housing units approved, and so 7,600 units approved towards the 8,000 is a really good start. At this pace, I'm confident that we'll meet that 8,000 target.
The mayor says there is still more work to do. The report shows only 123 of the units approved so far are designated affordable. Gillingham expects that number to rise once the city announces the first round of Housing Accelerator Fund recipients in the next few weeks. An Indigenous registered nurse from northern Manitoba is welcoming the apology from the Canadian Medical Association, but she says more needs to be done. The CMA formally apologized to Indigenous people yesterday for the harms caused to them by the medical system. Tina Campbell is from Mosaic Cree Nation in Manitoba, but she works as a nurse specializing in tuberculosis in Saskatchewan. She says the years of racism makes it difficult for her patients to trust the system.
We have to refer them to city centers or other provincial communities, and they're scared because of the discrimination they face when they go to the hospitals. And I work in tuberculosis, and there's still that huge stigma around that as well. So, you know, they can feel it when people have certain views.
And Campbell from the Mosaic Cree Nation says one of the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report stipulates people in healthcare be educated on the harms of the past. She says that will be key to helping people heal. The Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Selkirk says a solar glass processing plant proposed for his community would be the largest private investment in history. In the town's history. Alberta's Canadian Premium Sand is planning to mine silica sand at Hollow Water First Nation and process it in Selkirk. CEO Dwayne Nichols says that plant would become the second largest employer in Selkirk after the steel mill.
They're looking at $320 million worth of annual sales. So it's a huge economic driver. In terms of net employment, just for direct jobs, you know, the steel mill would still be a larger employer, but in terms of, you know, overall economic impact, it'll have a very comparable amount.
Canadian Premium Sand announcing yesterday Ottawa and the province have signed letters of intent to cover almost a third of the project's nearly $900 million cost. That is contingent on other financing coming together. Well, people in southeast Manitoba are still assessing the flood damage.
Water was coming in from pretty much all sides, but especially...
Valerie Rosenall lives in Mitchell, that's outside Steinbach. Crews have already pumped out the water from her basement. Now industrial fans are drying it out.
We had about, I would say, 7 inches of water in the basement. So everything was covered. It took maybe 10 minutes to rise up to that point, and then there was nothing stopping it, and you're just in a panic to overtakes, and then you just accept it and you figure everything's lost anyway, so you just go with it.
Other areas in the RM of Hanover were also hard hit by heavy rains this week. The municipality has received hundreds of calls from people dealing with high water. About 50 roads have been washed out in the area, and some local leaders hope the province's disaster assistance program will help people with the cleanup there. You can find more Manitoba news. Stay in step with it as it develops through the day. All you have to do is head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather, that's Thursday morning for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to our news department. Heather Wells is there with the team, including Chris Armstrong and Megan Ketchison this morning. All right, our live team here. Thanks to Kevin Ipatebo, who's been behind the controls of YouTube, and Corey Funk, And Abby Adiemi covering weather and traffic. Corey, anything left to say here on the commute?
Yeah, just a reminder, eastbound Centerport at Brookside, there was a multi-vehicle collision earlier today. Got a call from Allison, and it's blocking the right turn lane and the right lane. So you have to keep left to get around that. There are emergency vehicles on scene. You can't actually turn right onto Brookside, says Allison. And also northbound St. Mary's, just before Fermor, there is an illegally parked car in the curb lane, causing some pretty big backups for folks all the way to St. Vital, says Mike. So look up for that. Thanks for everyone who called, and I'll be back tomorrow to take some more.
All right. Well, here comes the rain again.
A warm start.
Falling on my head like a memo, right? Okay.
A warm start across the province. Cloud cover will definitely thicken through the morning. A slightest chance of showers developing for most of the region. We should see the sun really trying to make its appearance, but this showers is really going to dominate the day. Winnipeg, Brandon, Thompson, we will see highs ranging from 19 in Brandon all the way to 22 in Winnipeg and Gimli, with breezy conditions throughout the day into overnight, and still a slight chance of showers in the morning tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Take care, be well, everyone. Thank you for listening to CBC this morning. We hope you join us again tomorrow for another edition of Information Radio on 89.3. The Current's coming up next.